Austin. How are you?
Lisa.
City of Muskegon City Commission work session for Monday, September 13th, 2021. Do we have all staff here we need to?
Yeah, Leo's got the first two.
Okay.
I've got the next two.
Okay.
Mike's at Muskegon Heights presenting, and he should be here in time for this one.
For the
but
marijuana.
if not, I'll try to handle it.
Okay. Alrighty. Commissioner Ramsey is excused this week.
Today and tomorrow.
He is on vacation.
Okay.
Better be having fun.
Well, good evening, Mr. Evans. First thing up, alley paving policy.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Thanks for having me tonight. First item on the agenda today is a draft of a policy for paving alleys in the city. This was kind of brought about by citizen complaint and some staff desire to see a little bit more of this happen. Right now, every neighborhood in the city has alleys, yet very few of them are paved. A few of them have been paved throughout the years through special assessments and that process, but that process often becomes really burdensome when a neighborhood tries to see that done for their alley, to see improvements. So this was our attempt to try to simplify that process and give residents and businesses a path to get their alleys paved in a little bit easier, more expeditious, and cost-effective manner. The way this process would work is the city would be petitioned by a block. Block would designate a block captain really to go around, circulate a petition, collect signatures, fill out some basic information on the alley, a list of all the parcels that front on the alley, and bring that to us for consideration. It's not really need a unanimous vote or anything, but we'd like to know that most of the residents either support this or don't support it, so we can have a feel for that. Staff kind of looks at those alleys and says, are they good candidates for paving? Are there issues with ownership of the alley? What type of uses are on the alley? Are there trees overhanging the alley, utilities in the way, all those things? And we'll make a recommendation on that. If the staff believes it's a good alley to pave, they'll go back to the block captain and say, hey, we think your alley is a good alley to pave. Go ahead and collect the fees from your neighbors, bring that back. Once it's paid, we'll get you scheduled for paving. The work for the alley would all be done by staff in-house. We bought a paver, so we're able to do some of these small projects like this. Really, the fees amount to I think we were proposing $300 per residential parcel and $1,000 per non-residential parcel. And what we're trying to capture with those fees is really just the cost of the asphalt to complete the work. Any of the cost of the forestry work or utility adjustments, staff time and equipment, that's really already accounted for elsewhere in our budget, and we wouldn't be trying to collect any of that money. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think the other thing I'd say is we proposed it as a flat fee rather than a front footage for simplicity. We're not proposing that every individual person has to pay. For example, if there's 10 houses on a block and one person is just financially unable to do that, the other 9 people could certainly pay that amount. All we're proposing is that the fee be paid in full, however that amounts to. One person could pay it all in full if that's what, was decided to be done. So, and that's really about it.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner?
So, Leo, with the fee, so the $1,000 non-resident parcel, would that be anybody? Was it determined if it's a homestead or non-homestead? Is that what it is, or?
I was just going by the zoning designation of residential or non-residential.
Okay.
Was my intention.
Commercial industrial.
Commercial industrial.
So that's what we're really trying to separate out.
Yeah.
So. And then so that determines your final fee. So you estimated whatever. Most alleys are $3,000 to $4,000, but that's based on adding up the residential parcels at $300 or $1,000.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and like I said, we're trying. A typical alley is going to cost us around $4,000 to $4,500 in asphalt prices just to purchase the materials, and that's kind of the number that we were trying to find an easy way to capture approximately that number. Sometimes you might be more, sometimes it might be less, but that was the rough target we were going for.
So every alley has a different fee depending on how many parcels.
Correct. Yep. Could be some that maybe there's, only a parcel on either side of the alley, in that case, it would probably be a commercial industrial type use, so it would really be a $2,000 fee, and we might, not cover the full asphalt price, but there might be some that have a mix of residential and commercial where we collect $5,000 and we cover more than the asphalt price, so.
Okay. Questions here?
Well, yeah, I kind of read the agenda. I think you said something in there about would it be like 12 feet wide,
Yep.
400 feet long, but it's about 2 inches of asphalt on each alley. So, and you're just going to do it at, I guess, the highest priorities for each alley.
Yeah, we would, whichever blocks petition us, we would try to rank them based on, how many residents support this. And, we look at it from our maintenance side too, which alleys are more maintenance headache for us, which ones have higher use that are going to benefit more from getting paved. And we would try to prioritize those on an annual basis. Certainly, we're not going to be able to pave 20 or 30 alleys a year either. We'll have staff limitations where, this year we might be able to do 3, and next year we might be able to do 4. So that'll have to come into play as well.
Yeah. I guess one other thing there, excuse me. What about like little safety mechanisms? Because once that alley's paved, sometimes kids might ride through on that smooth pavement, and cars do come in and out or out of the drive. I mean, most of the alleys lit also with lighting and stuff back there also?
No, most alleys are not lit. I would say even the intersections where the alleys meet the streets often aren't lit. That's usually a mid-block location, and we usually only light at the intersection. So,
yeah. Something I never paid attention to, but yeah, I just thought I'd ask. Yeah.
I think it would, if you had improved alleys, you could probably see a increase in traffic on the alley, which might actually decrease, the blight or, some uses of the alleys that you don't want to see happen.
Mm-hmm.
The more cars and people that are using it frequently, the less likely someone is to hang out back there and do something that, you maybe don't want them doing back there.
Right. All right, thank you.
Sure. Because once upon a time we had the alleys, especially when we had the rear load for the trash pickup.
Yeah.
On those blocks that had it. And then, citizens took care of the condition. We all mowed it and the like. I know where my mom lived, that'd be kind of hard to pave over something like that due to the fact that the sewer main and everything, runs down the middle of the alley servicing the houses on Terrace and Howden. But, when we went front garbage, service, alleys went into disuse except those utilized for, backload garages. And
A lot of our alleys in the Nelson and McLaughlin neighborhoods have sewers in them, so we have a need to be back there just for the sewer maintenance. So having the alleys paved is a benefit to us, makes it easier for us to find the manholes and be able to get back there and access them when the need arises. So it's certainly a benefit to the city to see this done in a lot of cases as well.
Sure. Commissioner Emery?
So the city isn't going to choose which alleys. This needs to be petitioned to the city from residents.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
we
so
would
you're not gonna
prioritize
say-
them, but I wouldn't go out and pick them. We would
Okay.
let the residents bring that to us.
Yeah, I don't like the alley, and no one on my block has to use it to access their property. So I just feel like it's another invasion of my privacy, having people access my alley. So in fact, I want to petition. No, I won't. to
vacate it?
my alley.
No,
yeah.
not me.
Huh?
No, not me.
Yeah. So, okay, that makes me feel better about it. So good. What if let's say there's 14 houses on a block. One wants it paved, but no one else does. Can that one pay for all paving, but other people don't really want it paved?
I suppose they could. We do ask of the block captain when they circulate their petition to gauge the support of everybody that has frontage on the alley. So I think that when we reviewed it as a staff level scene, 13 people that don't want it and one that does is certainly not going to make it a high priority.
Yeah.
We want to see, and we want to do an alley that the people want to see done. You know, I hope that it's, you know, we push these forward with 90% support, you know, and maybe one or two people that feel the financial burden that they can't support it, you know, be in the opposition to it.
Yeah. What will the cost to the city? Do you have an estimate about
You know, typically it's, you know,
400
if you,
feet of asphalt would do? Would cost
you know,
us?
factoring in labor and equipment cost, it's probably 2 to 3 times that $4,000.
Okay.
You know, so in total, it's probably close to $15,000, I would say, for most alleys. You know, the staff time is time that's already budgeted. We've realized some pretty good efficiencies in our work with the use of this paver that have, you know, allowed us to offer this kind of situation
So
where we have.
so we're not making bank
No,
on paving somebody's alley. Okay.
absolutely not.
We need to get that word out there.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, just to piggyback off on that. Conversely, we're actually, it sounds like we're paying extra in for it because you said it's about 2 to 3 times the cost of what the fee we're charging. So we have a net negative cost or a net cost incurred by the city. So what's the impetus for this policy moving forward versus a special assessment, which had been considered before for alleyways that would cover the full cost of the pavement for the alleyway?
I would say this was designed to be simpler than a special assessment, obviously, and a faster, more streamlined process. You know, the impetus is we also benefit from having the alley paved in terms of maintenance costs. We can get to our sewers better. We can take care of that alley better when we need to be there ourselves to take care of it. So those are the big two that jump out to me as our benefit from it. We certainly do benefit from having these paved and having more traffic back there to reduce the blight and increase the use of that area and kind of engage that public space that gets forgotten about a lot of times when we focus entirely on the streets and the park spaces.
Okay. Is there an expectation that those that do pave their alleyways will have more frequent or better maintenance from the city versus the other alleys?
I wouldn't say more frequent. I would say we would have less maintenance to do there. You know, our maintenance would be primarily limited to plowing, whereas our gravel alleys, we usually have to go grade those at times. Once they're paved, we wouldn't have to do any of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. To follow up on Commissioner Muskegon's question earlier in terms of the who's getting charged what, you said it was basically based on the zoning. So if we have a church or synagogue or what have you that's in a residential zoning, they're not going to get charged a $1,000 fee. It would be the $300 fee.
Guess I'm not a zoning expert. I'd have to look at that a little more. I was picturing it more in my head about a residential house being $300 or a commercial industrial use being $1,000. So how a church would fit, I'd have to think about that a little bit more. You know, I did write in there for any city-owned parcels to be exempt, so it's possible you could look at something like that too.
Okay.
Anything else on this end before we come back to Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner German, anything? Commissioner Emery? Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
I don't really think I have anything. I'm okay with this. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't. It does seem simpler. It's resident initiated. You know, we're accommodating them. There's benefits for us as well. We're not diverting resources from repairs to our roads, is what I read.
That's correct.
Road repairs will always be a priority.
Road repairs will always take priority over an alley paving.
Over alley pavement. See, the assessment's more time consuming, but I also see it as being, I guess, a fairer process in terms of it being, you know, footage, frontage versus a flat fee. So if someone's got 30 feet of alleyway versus 100 feet of alleyway, they're being charged based upon that versus a flat fee. So I just see it being more equitable, but that's still an option. So I don't have a problem with this policy.
I think one thing you may find without the traditional assessment policies, potential for greater buy-in from the residents affected. You know, and again, it's resident generated. It's nothing we're attempting to force anybody into. But these matters do come up, and we can leave it to the residents to really determine whether it's something they really want or not.
Yeah, that one of the really nice things about this is that when you do have a situation, and I'm thinking of the alleyway that they wanted to get paved downtown a couple years ago, and that was also resident initiated. It was going to be a special assessment. There ended up being some folks that had reservations about it in the end and didn't want to pay for it. But this avenue that staff's presenting today would allow those residents that do want it to just cover the cost of the share of the residents that don't want it. Whereas the special assessment route, there isn't that option. Like
Right.
it's going to be assessed to each property owner. So that's a really nice benefit of this additional tool, so that it could still be accomplished. And
Right. I can see this would benefit right across from me, that perpendicular alley that dumps all of its dust and gravel in my driveway, throughout the year. I hope that they would follow through again and look at the potential, because it would be a real benefit to them as well as their neighbors on Montgomery and Palmer. Anything else for Leah?
I just say, I guess something we do want it to be harmonious. So I just would encourage the staff, like if we adopt this, we kind of see how it works. Cause I don't know, sometimes people are funny. You think you're doing them a favor or, but they're like, they think that they own the alley or that, so I just know, I just want to be open to some, possible tweaks as we experience it to make sure that there's, not disagreements and people being very upset. But it doesn't seem like it should, but
I think we'll have to revisit the fees on an annual basis just because they'll fluctuate as the price of asphalt changes. So, there's an opportunity almost every year to amend the policy to update the fees. And maybe that could include other updates or, things that we address throughout the learning curve on it.
I think it's
Where-
a great start.
so where is the funding coming from for our share of the cost to do this? Is it coming from
Alleys
local
are-
roads or what?
Alleys are generally paid out of the street funds, major and local streets. Yep.
Major and local?
I think primarily local.
Okay. So is your expectation to like set a line item, so to speak, for alley paving each year?
It's already built into our budget for alley maintenance. We have alley maintenance line items in the
So it would
budget.
come out of the alley maintenance
Yep,
line item.
it
for
would be
this.
included in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one more question.
Go right.
I'm just wondering that this splitting, them paying a third and we covering 2/3 of it, was there consideration of just doing it 50-50? Like if you come up with half the cost, we'll kick in the other half the cost to pave the alleyways?
I started out with the intention of trying to cover the material cost was really the way I looked at it. So
Okay.
I didn't get into it too much deeper than that. So
Okay. So it's basically our labor cost then.
right, it's our labor and equipment costs are the part that really aren't captured here.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Now that brings us to item 2, and that is you as well, Mr. Evans. A draft deer hunting ordinance.
Yes, we have a draft ordinance that would permit archery hunting within the city limits. The process would work such that a parcel or a pair of parcels would petition the city and fill out an application to become a deer management area. A deer management area has to be at least a minimum of 5 acres, composed of at most 2 parcels. At the time of the application, they would need to let us know, how many hunters they're planning on, where their shooting locations would be. If they have a set duration where we're only going to allow this from, October 1st to October 14th, they would need to adhere to all the Michigan DNR rules and regulations was the big thing for us. We're not setting any rules against the DNR. We're only telling people where they can and can't hunt in the city. Otherwise, you need to follow DNR rules 100%. You need to have a DNR tag. The animal has to be legally harvested. Everything that you would normally do for the DNR, which helps us because the DNR conservation officers can then help with the enforcement and complaints and things like that. They'll be more engaged if we're following traditional state rules. We stole a couple things from some other ordinances. I believe we required a 150-foot setback from any public building, street, or the DMA perimeter itself. That is not a state rule. I believe that comes from Norton Shores ordinance, although I'd have to double check. We kind of mingled between the Norton Shores ordinance and the Montague ordinance. Hunters are not allowed to trespass for any reason. So, if you were to shoot a deer and it went off of the property you have permission to hunt, you may not go pursue that animal outside of the area where you're approved to go. We did also work in a condition that public lands could apply for the same process. In that instance, staff would bring a similar proposal to the commission and say, we would like to create a deer management area at this piece of public property. In the instance that we do allow a public land piece to be considered a DMA, we would also require hunters to get a permit from us, which basically would cover the cost of a background check, a simple background check, and some research on that person to make sure they're somebody that we would like to have hunting on public property. Again, they would have to still follow all the DNR rules and regulations, have a proper tag. In the instance of a public land permit, it would certainly be something that would have a condensed season. In Michigan, the archery season runs from October 1st to January 1st. If we were to permit this in a park, it would have to be a very short window so we could close the park, operate it safely in a manner like that. Really just looking for feedback. This is a draft. We prepared it as an alternate to the cull that was done 2 years ago. It's just another method to try to accomplish the same thing. The cull costs us money, obviously. This would hopefully be relatively revenue neutral for us in that aspect, but would hopefully still accomplish the same kind of goals.
Questions? Commissioner?
So at most 2 parcels, 5 acres. So really what is realistic? Have you looked at what areas we're actually talking about? I mean, we're obviously not going to do it in the Nelson neighborhood or...
Right. If you were to look at the areas where we completed the call, I think there's probably only 2 private parcels that meet that threshold. The country club and the former Sappy site are probably the only 2 parcels that are privately owned on that side of the city above that threshold. And the docks site as well would be a third one. So otherwise it would be public parcels. On the east end of town, there are some private parcels over down in the swamps of the 4 Mile Creek and the Ryerson Creek swamp that probably exceed 10 or the 5 acre threshold. So there's not a lot of parcels around.
Commissioner Sherman?
Yeah. It's good to see. I know that they're not using firearms, but this is also crossbow that they can use also.
Yes, crossbows
Right.
are legal.
Now, I did have a question, and I can't find the actual language, but maybe you can just kind of brief me on that. Shooting in a straight pathway, could you kind of elaborate on that? I thought I saw something in the proposal.
When a private landowner petitions to be created like this, we would ask them where they intend to hunt from and which direction they would be shooting, just so we could verify that, hey, I'm not setting up 5 feet from my neighbor's back porch just over the property line and shooting back towards a house or something like that.
Okay.
Would be our intention.
There'd be signage or anything like that out there, or?
No signage.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Emery?
This would be by permit only. So let's say the owners of the Sappy property wanted it, they would have to seek us for a permit.
They would have to get permission to hunt on that parcel. We
Okay.
would not necessarily review the individual hunters on a piece of private property the way this is written. That would be up to them to vet that per their own policy. Our only requirement is that they're legal hunters in the state and possess a license.
Okay. Yeah, that you and I talked about this before tonight, and my ward probably has the most deer and acreage, other than Ryerson Creek. Yeah. So I haven't gotten any feedback nay or yay about this. And I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I was wondering myself too.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. There was a
they're-
comment on
but they're
social media.
saying, be support,
Yeah.
reasonable level of support at the time for the call,
Mm,
for not just because they're eating my begonia reasons, but wasting, uh, environmental,
right.
stress, stuff like that. So
Yeah. I mean, I heard a lot about the cull.
Sure.
But with this one, nothing except that one person mentioned that it was firearms, and I had to
right, dial that one.
dial that one back and read read the article, not just the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
So
Commissioner Johnson.
I'm supportive of this. I'm happy that you continued looking at this and how we might be able to accommodate this. When we considered the call a couple years ago, I'd heard from some residents about doing archery and having a permitting process, and I brought it up then. There wasn't much of an appetite at the time to pursue that, or whether it was just time constraints or staff resource constraints. But I appreciate that you and our staff have been continuing to explore this opportunity, and that saves us the cost of having to do calls and deal with that potentially. This could help with the habitation, with population management issues. So this seems like a reasonable balance that doing it in a manner respectful of public safety while still accommodating those that might want to do some deer hunting via archery in our city. So thank you, Director Evans.
Vice Mayor.
So, what does happen with the deer that someone shoots, injures, and it takes off into a non-hunting area, someone else's property? What happens then?
I guess there's probably two routes. The hunter could seek permission to trespass and, go collect that animal. A lot of times when we get car deer hits, they end up dying in people's yards, and, they'll contact DPW to come take care of that and dispose of the animal. So those would be the two resolutions I would see for that.
So they would be able to trespass with permission.
With permission, certainly.
Okay.
And that's not unheard of, even when you go off into the woods. You might be on state or federal property. The deer goes on to a piece of private property, go knock on the farmer's door, and then you go find your deer in the midst of his cornfield. So.
Yeah, I'm not a deer hunter, but I figured, I just wanted to clarify that they can go over to the neighbors or whatever and says, hey, I think that animal right there is mine. I shot it.
But of course, this is a lot of our experience level or our perception level of what deer hunting is about. Because
right.
For many of us, we don't think about it in the midst of, a municipality, even though other municipalities have utilized this. When we were going through the call discussion here a couple seasons ago, Director Lewis had brought up different municipalities that actually utilize these type of models for addressing the deer herd population. And I can't say I wasn't surprised to see it, pop up, but it appears well thought, and there's a basis for it from the experiences of other municipalities who utilized those experiences and existing policies of other municipalities to help inform ours. So I think it's a good job. Anything else for Director Evans? If not, we'll move on to item number 3, ARP Infill Housing Program.
Okay, so commissioners know we released a request for qualifications to the public in the search of builders to participate in this program. We did receive 4 responses to the request. We've identified all 4 of them as qualified to build at least at some level a number of houses for the city. LRS Enterprises, you guys might recognize it as Rudy Briggs. He has built for the city, and we have some experience with him. Williams Construction, you might recognize that as James Williams, who built Regency Apartments over there on Marquette. Kramer Builders, you might not recognize them, but they have built for Onita and CNS, and she had a good experience with them. And West Urban Properties, which is Dave Dusendane Custom Homes, who is in the midst of a pilot program with us right now and built Midtown Square Phase 2. Every one of the three smaller, I guess the three smaller builders, we were able to accommodate the maximum number of houses they felt comfortable being able to build. And then West Urban Properties had provided a proposal indicating that they could build all 5 million if they were so granted. We recommended that LRS, Williams, and Kramer each get the number of houses that they were able to commit to, and the remainder be assigned to West Urban Properties to put together proposals for. All four of them would be putting together proposals. But one other, I guess, potential for us to discuss today too as part of this is we could consider allocating a little more than $5 million and essentially accommodate all of the houses that these folks are able to build as part of the first phase of this program. We would need to allocate somewhere around $1.75 million more. We used a flat amount of $250,000 per house here just for the estimates. We'll work with each of these builders to identify location and housing type and things like that, and then get down to price as part of that process. So what we might find is some of the builders, depending on the type of houses they're building or the size of houses they're building, and in some cases a location, just based on the amount of site work they have to do, the houses could be a little bit more or a little bit less. For example, if somebody is building townhouses or something like that, they can probably do them a little bit cheaper. If somebody's building a 1,800 square foot house versus a 1,400 square foot house, it might be a little bit more. And so staff will work with these four builders to kind of bring forward a recommendation for each of them that best utilizes the allotment here to get us the type of housing that we seek, that meets affordability standards, but also meets some of those green initiatives and things like that we talked about when we put together the original RFQ. Staff's pretty happy. We were expecting we get a couple, and the couple that I thought I'd get would come from a place like Allen Edwin or something like that. So we were excited to see really three smaller builders here interested in getting involved. In particular, two of them that are from right in our community and build in our community already.
That's excellent.
You'll probably notice on the agenda for tomorrow that we do have one of the homes on Leonard Street. We accepted an offer on it that we're going to be looking for the commission to approve. So that means one of the two built are accounted for. And then my expectation is that LRS would use these resources to continue that stretch on Leonard and build out the remainder of the houses that we had planned for there. So I'll take any questions. I know Dave came home from vacation specifically to spend the day with us here today because he wanted to make sure he was able to answer any questions. And he might be able to give us an update on how phase one of the pilot program is going, so people can kind of see how, who's renting these houses and, who's occupying them at least, and what the level of success has been for the houses that we've been able to build.
Very good. Questions for the manager right off, Vice Mayor?
Yes, Frank, when you say we may be able to allocate more money so all of the homes that are wanting to be built can be built, is that just saying that the West Urban Properties fulfill the rest of the houses that he wants to build and the rest of them are already doing as many as they wanted?
Correct. If we were to accommodate all four builders with the amount of homes that they said they could build, we would need about $1.75 million more allocated to this. With the one exception of Kramer Builders, they said they could build 3. But if you read through their letter, they didn't think they could start on that third one until like next summer.
Right.
So it didn't make sense to allocate those dollars off to them yet, because the goal was to get all these started, relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But we could revisit them next summer if we decide we want to rotate this into a second round. We can decide if we want to do that there. The reason why I brought it up is I know in my communications with Dave and in reading through his proposal was that he has the resources to do the full $5 million plus our 5 million. So, the one thing about this program that's been different about all the other ones is each of these builders are going to bring matching dollars to the table. And so if we allocate another 1.75 million, we're really getting, 3 million plus $3.5 million more allocated to building houses in our community in 2021, early 2022. So that's the only reason why I bring it up. We set $5 million because I thought it was attainable. I think now that we see what the qualifications look like, if the proposals come back that are reasonably affordable and we think that we can sell them to the income groups that we want to sell them to and recoup the amount of money that we think we need to be sustainable, then it probably makes sense to at least consider, maximizing the investment now.
Thank you. I like this project and like the idea that it is going into the city, the inner city that we're building out now, and we're doing that with all, I would say, all levels of builders, and we're also being very diverse in the builders that we're using. So I really like this program.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Anything, Commissioner?
Not right now.
Okay. Commissioner Emery?
Are these owner occupied?
Yeah, these are all meant to be sold.
Okay. So let's say, for instance, the Kramer Builders, they'll be building 2 houses because the cost is going to be about $250,000 per house.
That was my estimate.
Okay.
They're talking about building 2 houses because that's what if you read their letter, that's what they could commit to doing. I think from a staffing standpoint.
Right, because they're able to match the $250,000 fund.
Yep.
So
They may propose a $200,000 house. We don't actually have we didn't ask builders to give us the actual house and pick a lot with this. We were really just testing their qualifications. So the next step would be to take all 4 of these and then have them work up proposals for for the houses that they propose to build, which would include the cost to us, and then bring those back one at a time with development agreements to the city.
okay.
City Commission for approval.
So I know we have Dave here. Yes, please. Yes. Since you're here, and I know that you're very experienced.
Thank you.
With such things, do you think that the cost is, let's say, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with a garage is going to be $250,000?
No, you can get them down to 175 at the bare minimum with apartment grade finishes. You can get them as high as 300. It all depends what you want to put inside.
Okay.
A front elevation could change the cost of it as well. As you see the houses that we're putting up in the pilot program, we're trying to keep them affordable, but we'd like to put nicer elevations on and granite countertops in all the houses, not just some of the houses. We have to try to keep the pricing still at a good price point where it's affordable.
Yeah.
But in this program, after several conversations with Frank, it's great because you can take, if you noticed on my proposal, we just picked some lots, 1 lot in each neighborhood, and then we photoshopped a house that we thought would kind of match the houses around on that neighborhood onto that lot, what it would look like. And some of those houses are, Cape Cods, and a Cape Cod front elevation's probably 20% more than a regular salt box elevation. But if you're going to sell these, it's the right way to do it is to match what's currently there. And some of them are going to go ahead and be craftsman, and some of them are not, and others will just be modern. It all depends on what area we're in. So the nice deal is we can pick different lots, and the nice part about this program is the city staff is involved with picking the lots with myself. And then we can say, hey, this house would look good, and then Jamie and Frank and Mike, they can critique the house and say, well, gosh, it'd be nice if we had a little bit more corbels on here, an extra couple windows over there, and it's more feasible with doing it all on my own. I have to cover all the costs, but in this program, the city's going to cover half the cost, and they're more of my partner, rather than it's all on me and I'm just building the city up more and more. And we'll continue doing our pilot program that we're already currently doing, but they're not going to compete against each other because one is in a rental type program and more affordable, where some of these could cost $300,000, some could cost $250,000, some could cost $200,000. It really comes up to what the staff is going to approve.
Okay. Yeah, I'm concerned that they won't be affordable. That for our city's AMI, and that's my concern.
And that decision really is made by staff. It's not myself. It's made more by city staff. What if you want to, like we had talked about, tankless water heaters and wood LP smart trim on the siding. Those costs are expensive. A 13 SEER air conditioner. So there's areas where you still stay within code, you still build a nice house, and it's more obtainable. And then there's other ones that have marble floors and heated bathroom floors and tiled showers in the master. That house is going to cost more money. So it really comes down to what the staff's asking us to put in it. As I stated with one of our meetings with Frank and also with staff, that I'm completely will be open to what you ask me to put in it, but just remember, everything costs money.
Right.
So if you want tiled showers, we'll do it, no problem. But you're about $6,000 for an average tile shower, opposed to $800 for a tub. So a lot of it's going to be driven by staff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner German, anything?
Yeah. Thanks. How you doing, Mr. Duzendy?
Fantastic.
I
Thank
see
you,
your
sir.
project's going well in the city, and I appreciate the fact that you came out before doing some of the projects to speak with people in the community to address their concerns. And as you stated, the projects will be headed by staff. And I guess one of the main concerns that I share the same thing, and I've stated this before, when it comes to affordable housing and who would be able to afford it. You have no control of what staff does, but these houses that you're going to be building have lots been targeted already. So, and I guess just for a question, so for the record, how many houses have you built so far, Mr. Duzendy?
Total in Muskegon?
Yes.
Over 100.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're over 100. I think the last I counted was just over 100 total permits that we've pulled.
Right. So now for the phase 2 that we're looking at, have you targeted any lots that you're looking to potentially build on or right now? And if so, in what areas?
Well, right now in the pilot program, we're approved with basically the majority of all the lots in Nelson neighborhood, with some few over in Jackson Hill and some more over in Marquette. But the majority of them are all right in Nelson for the pilot program. And we intend to build on all of them and then continue to move our way out, throughout into the more suburb area. But we wanted to get the core down, core city, downtown area at Nelson built out and then move our ways back.
Okay.
And currently in Nelson, I believe we're probably just about 40 just over 40 homes total.
Yeah.
But in the pilot program, we're approaching on to the 25, 26 houses. So within the next, I'm going to guess 30 days, I should be ready to sit down with the commissioners and talk about the next phase 2 and how phase 1 performed, and it's doing very well, actually.
Yeah. Now, in this next phase, any of the houses that you're looking to build, they're going to have basements, and in these new homes that you're looking to build?
Sure. Yep. We put basements in. Again, that was directed by city staff, and we would even do basements in our pilots, but we give more livable space upstairs if we put basements. Then it takes away square footage from the livable space, because most people just use basements as a storage area. So what we've done is we just put the extra 2-stall garages, and we bumped them out an extra 4 feet in width and length, so they have more area in their garage to store their belongings, rather than putting them in a basement with no windows. Because almost all of the lots are just regular full-size basements, no walkouts or daylights.
Okay. Commissioner, I'm going to take questions.
Okay.
And
Then I have one last question after he finished. Yeah.
And Commissioner Johnson?
So it sounds like if we move forward with this allotment, according to this 3.25 million to you, that you'll be then pairing with your own funds to move forward with building. How many units would that be altogether?
Depending on the final price, as Frank said, they just used it just for easy numbers. He used 250 as an easy number just to allocate how many houses that money would afford.
So we're looking at,
It was I had 40 in here. If that ends up being the average cost, was 40 houses.
okay, so 26 more by you then with this program, but you would not be. You'd still be moving forward. Your expectation is that you still be moving forward with our existing development agreement with West Urban Properties on that pilot program. That you'll be. Sounds like from what I just heard, you'll be coming back here soon to move forward with phase 2.
Yes, I plan to continue with the pilot program, and that's why when Frank had put this offer out for an RFQ, my commitment to match the 5 million we allocated would be approximately 50 homes, and realistically, if you want me to throw 100 up, I'll throw 100 up. It's really what you want me to do. I can get them done and that is along with my current pilot program that I'm already currently doing now.
Okay, so you'll be moving forward simultaneously then.
Absolutely, we have enough staff and enough contractors to continue on with both programs, and complete the because they're not competing against each other. One's for the family that needs a place to rent for the time being, and then one is for someone that doesn't need to rent, they can buy. So it's a brilliant idea.
All right, excellent. Thank you for your work on the existing program, as well as putting in for this program so we can get more housing built. One of the concerns I have is, since we set out a month ago with this, is that we have seen the number of houses reduced and the average cost is expected to go up. Like a month ago, we were anticipating 50 units altogether at approximately $200,000 on average. Per house, and now we're looking at $250,000, which gives me and other. And I'm sure none of us like to see the cost rising, but and we know that costs have increased for construction, but we knew that a month ago too.
Yeah,
so
but
that's what gives me a little bit of pause that we're seeing that.
Yeah, it's just like it was, 2 years ago, and you and I had that conversation. We don't know what's coming down the line, and the costs are going up weekly, and they're coming down weekly. Lumber's already coming back down, but now siding and drywall is going back up. Tin for HVAC is now going up 10%. So it always just runs itself up and down plateau. At the end of the day, the construction costs are going to be the construction costs, and none of us know exactly what that's going to be. But I think the number that you're talking about of the 200 to the 250, that wasn't based on construction costs had gone up. That was just based on an easy number that Frank had said, hey, if we want to be conservative, can I throw a really nice house up for 250? Absolutely, we can. If you want to keep it at the 200, you see what we had built already for the Timberwood plans in the first Midtown 2, and those were selling for 190, I think 6.
Yeah.
196. I think those average was 196 just for those houses there. So we can still build houses that keep you under the 200. It just comes down to what staff has asked me to build. But it can be done, absolutely. And so we could put more houses up for 200, or we can go to the 250 and put less houses up. It's completely up to what staff has asked me to do.
And if I could, one of the reasons why I put that cushion in there was mostly after having some conversations with Dave and doing a little more research, talking to the other builders about those extra things we wanted to use to make these different, the additional costs of adding the basement, doing the LP siding, upgrading like the efficiency standards on some of them. Those all cost money. And so we wanted to make sure that that what I proposed to you was that they would have those characteristics, or most of them would. And so I want them to give me the price of what those characteristics look like. So then when I come back to the group here and we say, okay, here's a house that has those things that we said we really wanted, and here's a house that doesn't, and here's the difference in price. And now that's when I think we'll start to, that's when we'll all start to get our hands dirty and say, okay, these things are important to us. Are they this important to us? And if they're this important to us, and affordability is also this important to us, how much are we willing to subsidize to make sure that we get them built the way we want them, and they're affordable for the people that we want them to be affordable for. And so the idea that it's 200 or 250, I don't think we should get hung up on that, because we have some ways where we can get it down if we want to get a lower some efficiencies. For example, on the air conditioning unit is a good example. Or if we can find a place in one of the neighborhoods where we can do some more townhouses, for example, because the townhouses that were built on Monroe, they sold for $20,000 each, less each than the single family houses. They're not much smaller, but they were just the economies of scale. We're able to build them a little bit cheaper, and that's part of the whole exercise I think that we've been having when we talked about inclusive or inclusionary zoning and all those things, missing middle. There are ways that we can give people the square footage they want and some of the extra things that we want. We can do it a little bit cheaper if we open our mind to what fits in areas. And I think that's the point that Dave makes is once we know how much we're going to allocate to each of these builders, they can go to town, and somebody like Dave could say, you know what, I can build 5 extra homes if you let me build them this way on this parcel. And so let's consider if that's an option. Mm-hmm. And LRS is already building on Leonard, so I mean what they're going to build is probably going to look a lot like what they built now. Those were costing us, I think, $225. So if he has similar costs and builds them the similar way, I would expect that those would be less than $50. But we just wanted to use a nice round number so that I didn't end up allocating $200 to each of them and then finding out that I can't build, like LRS can't fulfill their obligation with only $200.
I think it was more about the dollar amount more than the housing amount. It was more or less, could I match the $5 million? And as you can see in my proposal, I can. So that's what I would be committing to, is I would match dollar for dollar, and then together we can design, does that get us 50 homes? Does it get us 40 homes? Does it get us 60 homes? Mm-hmm. Together as a team, we can figure that out. And if you say, hey, we'd rather have more homes, okay. A basement's going to cost you $12,000 to $14,000. We want to save that and put it into a different home, we can. Mm-hmm. Add up 10 of them, you're $120,000, you're halfway to a new home. Mm-hmm. So, and that's just for like a basement. For instance, the LP siding, you could be $20,000 more on a house, because once you get the LP siding, if you don't order already painted, then you got to pay someone to paint it on top of actually installing it. So now you're double dipping the cost of what it would be for a vinyl sided home. Then you got upkeep, maintenance, etc. And we're trying to build the city back up, not have it go down in 10 years when somebody that lives there doesn't want to spend the money to have someone come out and do a $20,000 paint job on their house. That's the stuff we kind of got to look forward to in the future as well. Low maintenance is always the best. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Most people don't even like to mow their own lawn anymore these days. They usually hire it out.
Or they don't, and that's why we have to have a law to mow your lawn.
And that's what I'm implementing. I'm implementing that with our pilot program as well. Is we're putting that offer as low as $17 to mow a lawn. We're putting that as an offer that we can build it right into their monthly rent, so they don't have to worry about it. We have a service that comes in and does it. We pay them. It just goes in the rent. We take care of all the extra costs and the time to do it free of charge. Just so that we can keep. But that's why we put irrigation, and that's another thing too, Ken, sorry, Commissioner Johnson. That's another thing to think about as well is we're in this cost. Do we want to put underground irrigation in? Do you want hydro seed down or just regular grass seed down? It's a big difference, and it is a cost. An average house is going to cost you an extra $3,000 just for the irrigation, and probably another $500 to $600 more than the seed to go to hydro seed. So the sky's the limit. You can have whatever you want. It's just going to cost different amounts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
in all of my pilot programs, I have that. I have irrigation in every one of our homes. Mm-hmm. We put underground irrigation in. We got hydro seed in. We want our lawns nice and green, and they are. And now it's come time to we'll offer that to cut them as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I inquired about that a month ago before we set out with RFQ. Is the question of including or not including the underground irrigation, because it is an extra cost, and if we're trying to be affordable or keep it as affordable as possible, where are some of the things that you could remove or adjust to bring that price down?
Well, right into the trees. You could put a $700 tree in, or you can put a $50 shrub in. It really comes down to the decisions that staff is going to approve me for. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can offer the sky's the limit.
Yeah, same thing with the siding. That's where do you find the balance though? Of
Exactly.
The cost up front for the quality versus the long term maintenance cost. So those things that yeah, we'll have to find that balance.
Sure.
But it sounds like one thing I heard that these aren't going to be cookie cutter houses. They're going to be conforming with the character of the neighborhood. It's going to be different styles, which is nice. So are we going to be open to? Because you and I had talked before about how do we keep costs down, or what are some other options to get costs down? And you had an idea for a house with a smaller footprint that you could, have a second floor and still have 3 bedrooms, 1 or 2 baths in there, but get that cost down to, at the time I think you said 120, 130,000. But that the footprint of it is not permitted in our current zoning. It's too small for the footprint. So are we as a city going to be exploring that option with him where it is appropriate in sections of our city to have housing with smaller footprints so that we can keep that cost down and so that we have a variety of housing, not having housings mostly at that 200 to 250,000 price point, but create a variety of types of housing and be able to potentially present some housing at that 130, 140, 150,000 price point that is more accessible for residents, particularly our residents.
Yeah, I'll just say we're interested in seeing what these proposals look like and what they're able to do. The goal is to get some built. I think the quicker way to do that is to help the houses fit the scale would be to have that be a duplex, right, or 2-family attached to single family home, not necessarily a rental. And we see that in Terrace Point, where Dave is building now. They were able to build smaller units on the interior courtyard of that development, but the houses look similarly sized to what's around them because they're duplexes. So they pushed the two together, and I think you're able to get those a little bit cheaper, per square foot than the single family on the waterfront.
And the finishes were a little different as well. Inside is to get the cheaper look. Yeah. But to answer your question, the footprint we are at the minimum that we can go on the footprint, and we've gone up, and we're still getting 3 bedrooms. And all of our houses are 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2 full bathrooms, and a 2-stall garage. So we've been able to hit that market that I wanted to. But you're exactly right. If we can, in some areas, adjust the base square footage for footprint, and maybe only have to do a 2-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom, to get that cost down under the 200 or even at the 175 for matter, it just has to have some flexibility. But that's not how the code reads right now. That's not approved. But there's other ways that we can talk about in further meetings if you'd like. But just a quick example, it calls for driveways to be attached to the alley that we had just discussed. The alleys are not maintained, and the alleys have potholes and they're dirt. But we got this beautiful driveway we just spent $4,000 putting in to reach the alley, and everybody's asking, why do I have to have a concrete driveway? I'd rather have a yard and not enter from the alley that is all muddy every time I get my car washed and it rains. These are things that I'm up against with the homeowners that I currently am building for now. And some of them haven't even, they backed out of the deal because they didn't want to drive down a dirt alley to enter into their concrete. So that's a possibility that we could talk about maybe not putting. If you're not going to pave the alleys, maybe we don't put driveways all the way out. We just put an apron in at the front of the garage and then leave it gravel the rest of the way to match the actual alley. So there's ideas and there's ways to cut costs. It's just which ones do you want to approve?
And I would just say one thing. I think we got to be careful when we get that footprint too small, because I think we saw the struggle with the ones you built on Webster when we ended up, by the time you put a kitchen and a living room and a dining room, there ended up being no room for the half bath that we had originally said we wanted these to be visitable.
Yep.
And those ones right there, we weren't able to fit that on the first floor because there ended up being no room for it.
It was because we ended up having to go with a front load garage. If we didn't have to go with the front load garage and we could have come off the alley, we would have been able to do the half bath. And believe it or not, they're all gone. They're all done. They're rented. Even the ones that aren't finished yet are already pre-leased. So, it still worked for some people, but then there's others that it didn't work for. But you just have to adjust depending on what lot we're building on. And if those weren't front load garages, we could have had a half bath on the main level. But they still got 3 bedrooms, 2 full baths, and a 1.5 stall garage, not a 2 stall.
Mm-hmm.
So
Unfortunately, all the housings that we're doing going forward are going to have a main floor bathroom and a main floor bedroom.
Yeah, and that was a requirement, in here, and that's why I said let's be careful about maybe trying to squeeze like the first floor down to like 600 square feet or something like that, because then it'll become really difficult to get those amenities in there, and then we'll be stuck sitting here at the same time going, okay, what do we move upstairs? And it's easiest to move that bathroom upstairs, but then it eliminates all the rest of the visitability. The all the other things we added are now moot because it's not visitable anymore.
Yeah.
and with our CAT program, we can design everything. We can do, ranches with visible, ADA compliant. We can do 2 stories with main level master suites. We can do ranches with basements that then put an egress window in and put bedrooms downstairs and just do a ranch with a bedroom upstairs. But we can design anything. It just comes back down to is what does city staff want me to design. And then, there's a lot of design cost that goes into that as well, which I'll incur and not charge for because that's just part of my partnership with you. But we can design whatever it is you're looking to put on that particular lot. A wider home, longer home, 2-story, basement, no basement. We can design anything.
Vice Mayor, anything?
No.
Commissioner?
No, I mean, we haven't really discussed what Frank's idea was or whatever, but I mean, I think we should move ahead at some level for sure with this program. So
I just agree to begin moving forward those details about variances and styles and amenities and whatnot would be part of the ongoing conversation, negotiation with our contractors.
Yep. And I would just say if we're at least open-minded to the idea that I could bring the maximum from all 4 builders, I mean, we can make the decision on whether or not we want to approve the additional dollars. But I'd like to, if there's at least reasonable consent, that I should put the proposals together, assuming that we can accommodate, that additional 1.75 million or something above the $5 million to get to maximize. That's all I'm looking for. And otherwise, I'll work with all of them, or I'll probably have Mike or somebody work with all of them to pick out the lots and design the homes and get the pricing kind of locked in. And hopefully, for some of them, like Dave, maybe they can be back in a couple weeks. The other ones might need a little more time unless they're further along in the process. But believe it or not, we're approaching winter, and the best thing to do is to get these basements poured if we're going to pour them, get the foundations in if we're going to get them in, as many of them as we can before the frost, really starts to, increase our costs for digging and stuff like that. So we're going to try to move quickly as long as there's agreement here that we should move quickly
Before the supply chain gets any worse.
Well, not just that, but just even the load limits. We'll shut down. We can't bring concrete once they put the load limits on the roads. So if it's a program that you want to hit the ground running, we should probably go sooner than later because we are losing temperatures come up in the next 6 to 8 weeks. And as of right now, even if it was approved today, and I was to get on the program and have a house ready to go, let's say by Friday. I still have to meet with city staff, have them make their changes, get it approved. Then I got to get it out for pricing. Once we get the pricing back, then I got to get it approved again. Then I got to put permits and put the foundation in. And when the foundation's in, I'm sitting for 3 weeks waiting for it to cure before we can actually frame on it. So as you can see, we're already going to be in December. Even if we started now, we'd be in December before we had the first one going, being framed up. Or maybe even late November.
So, are you proposing, Frank, to amend the motion for tomorrow on the not to exceed part of it?
Yes, by 1.75 million. So it would go to $6.75 million of ARPA dollars.
And then a question, I mean, well, one thing is, then it's like an efficiency thing. So I'm guessing once you can build more if you have more committed. So, are we going to get proposals that are flexible if we don't, want to go with that full amount, or?
Yes. So the way that I'm viewing it, the other 3, the smaller ones,
Sure.
I think that that I'm going to lock them in and get them done for essentially the 3, 6, whatever that ends up to 14 houses or whatever total that they're committed to build. What we might find is one of them might change their mind or whatever between now and then, which we'll continue to work with them. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Dave to start to put together a process to spend the full $10 million that he's able to spend, and then I'll present that here to the commission. And you guys might decide you want to release the first 2.5 or 3 million and see how it goes. My recommendation would be for the efficiencies and the economies of scale, and just the idea that even with all this money, it's still only like 40 or 50 houses. The idea that we need the housing, and we know that it's important. We know that there's shortages all over West Michigan. That if we're ready to go and we got the folks ready to bring in the match money, our recommendation will probably be to maximize our dollars, especially because from the other ARP dollar standpoint, I don't think there are any other numbers, any other things out of there that are going to be that vital to be spent in the meantime that this would have this would negatively impact. A lot of the things we had on there are, they're multi-year investments, if they're even allocated at all.
Commissioner Emery?
And our this money will be returned to us
Yes.
with the sale of the homes.
Correct.
I knew that, but I just want to
The only part that wouldn't come back is if we
remind everybody.
if we choose to subsidize a sale, presumably to help meet the appraised value and the affordability guidelines that we're going to have. That's the only piece that wouldn't come back to us. We wouldn't ask the builder to share in that that's essentially ours.
Mm-hmm.
But what we could find is that there's a revenue share if there are some of them that sell for more. And so we might find that some of them will sell for more and some of them will sell for less.
Okay, so what you're asking for is the extra 1.7 million, so that we can fulfill all 4 of these builders.
Yes, correct.
Commissioner Jeremy?
And speaking of the other smaller builders, they're pretty much at their capacity of what they can do due to manpower and what they've done for this day project. So really, this, even if we didn't approve it, it probably wouldn't affect them anyway.
Correct. It would just impact West Urban. Mm-hmm. But like I said, West Urban's got the letter of credit from the bank, and they're ready to go. And so the way I look at it is, I think with West Urban we can get our biggest bang for the buck in terms of getting houses ready to go and built quickly in a sustainable way for the community. And the other ones will be, meet our obligation to hire some more local builders to get more people involved in the trades and have some variation in how we're spending the money. And they're also very well qualified as well.
Yeah. And I see, Mr. Deuce-Dean, you stated in your proposal about local contractors and suppliers and stuff like that. Just one other thing too, because we talked before when you talked about not an apprenticeship program, but something similar to hiring local. Have you had any workers from the community that you've hired since doing your projects?
Yeah, we have hired locals. We even are to the point to where if we see a gentleman walking down the street, we'll just holler at him and say, "Hey, you looking for a job?" But we have brought on laborers to help out, siding that's helped out. We're currently doing plumbing that's local. Our materials, as of in the proposal, just on my own projects, not even including the Terrace Point and any other stuff that we did with the city, we're approaching the 10 million mark right now. And I would, if I had to guess, I would say probably 70% of that is right here that's been brought to the locals.
Okay. Now, for this marketing real estate, I see you pretty much have your own realtor that you deal with. Have you? And that person is actually from Muskegon, is it?
Yeah, actually, it's my brokerage company. Yep, we do. I have a brokerage company as well. So my real estate brokerage company, my main broker is right here in Muskegon, living right downtown on Western Avenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, anything additional?
Yeah, a few additional questions. kind of want to wait for Frank to get back because curious about. He mentioned the appraised value, so I was wondering: are these being sold at the appraised value, or are we selling them at the construction value? So,
Question from Commissioner Johnson about values.
yeah, a moment ago you mentioned, if we sell below the appraised value, the subsidy and whatnot, and I just wanted to get some clarity. Are we selling it at construction value, and then the developer is being made whole regardless of what we sell at, or are we selling it at an appraised value, which could be, higher than the construction value?
I'm using those two terms interchangeably because historically the appraised value has been lower than the cost of construction. And we know that for the most part, if we're trying to get a buyer that is of modest or even middle income needs, they're not paying cash for these houses. So they need the appraisal to match up. So we'll have some work to do, but the goal is at the end when I bring you, it'll be just like Midtown Square kind of phase 2, where I say, this is how much we have into this house. This is what we're selling it for. This is our profit and or subsidy or however you want it. And this is how we plan on recouping it. Every one of these houses will be in the scattered site brownfield. So whatever we subsidize to keep affordability, we should have come back to us over time and through the tax capture. Yeah.
What's the mechanics of that subsidy? And can you also clarify, because MLive reported on this project that the $5 million would also be covering the cost of down payment assistance or that subsidy.
Well,
but it sounds like that's not the case, that this $5 million is going all towards construction. So what are the mechanics?
I think it's some more semantics. So what we found when we did Midtown Square Phase 2 was that we were discounting the sale price for people. And the problem that came from that is it then became a comp for the other ones. So even if somebody came in and was very well qualified when they got their appraisal, it was now at this lower level because we had to subsidize it, say for me or for a low income buyer. So that's why you see, like in my report here, I'm saying let's shift what we talk about to down payment assistance versus just reducing the cost of the home, and try to get the sale price to actually match up with the appraised value, and then provide down payment assistance to the people that need it or qualify for it at whatever level it takes to get down to what their affordability level is. And so that's why we were calling it down payment assistance. So it's really me changing the semantics of it, because I want to make sure that if we build 10 of them and the first 4 go to like income restricted buyers, but they're $20,000 or $30,000 less than the cost to build, it's going to cause the next, at least some of the next 6 to be sold at or near that value, even if the buyer's well qualified. If they have to finance it, the bank's not going to finance it for more than it appraises. So we want to keep the appraised values up, and that helps too, because then it allows people to build some generational wealth. So if we do it more like a down payment assistance that's forgiven or immediately forgiven or forgiven over time or however we want to do it, and they need to sell that house in 3 years or 5 years, they should have equity built into it, assuming the housing market stays at least flat over that time. So it'll help them build a little bit of equity right away, but doesn't give the equity to maybe a buyer that has more means and ability to pay for it.
Yeah, that makes sense. How are we funding the down payment assistance then? If someone needs $20,000 or $30,000 down payment,
it's essentially going to come right out of here.
That money coming from?
It comes right out of here.
So we can, if we're allocating $5 million, it's all going to construction. We have nothing left from this. How are we providing down payment assistance?
Well, remember, the house will be sold, so they'll go to a lender. So say the house costs $250,000. I'm an income qualified person. We sell it to me for $250,000, but to get it down to my affordability level, you have to take a $30,000 reduction on it. The bank is going to come in and still give us $250,000 minus $30,000. So we will just recoup less. So when I keep saying we're going to recoup our dollars, we'll recoup less. We'll recoup $30,000 less, or $20,000 less, or $10,000 less, or whatever the subsidy is.
I'm a little confused there, because a month ago you mentioned if someone is income qualified and the house is, to use the same numbers you just used, cost $250,000 to buy, and they're within the income threshold. They got a bank letter saying that they can get a loan up to $200,000, or let's say $220,000. So then there's a $30,000 difference, and so that we would, as part of this program, make up that difference. So where's that money coming from? If they only can get a loan for $220,000, it's being sold for $250,000. Where's that other $30,000 coming from then?
It's coming right out of here, right? Because remember, once we've spent the money, now we have income. So we're going to spend our $5 million, and instead of getting $5 million back, we'll get $5 million minus $30,000 back as they sell. So it's now that we're going to have to bring more money to the table. The sales that are coming through will come in, and they'll pay the builder, and then profit would go to us. If there's no profit, then we're just not going to get the money. Will just never materialize.
So we first have to sell market rate in order to have income to provide that subsidy.
No,
Because the very first house can't be a subsidized house.
Yeah.
If you have no money there to subsidize it, how could it be a subsidized house?
because the money's been spent. Do you get it?
No, you spend it all on construction.
Like this. So I pay Willie $10 to build a house. If Dave comes in and buys it for me for $8, I'm still going to get his $8, right? So I'm recouping $8 of my dollars instead of the 10.
Yeah, but if he's income qualified, you have to subsidize his $2. So where's those $2 coming from to subsidize that?
They're not. They don't need to. It doesn't. That would be like a double subsidy. I don't think you're understanding it. So the builder's whole. He's got his $10.
Yeah, we're gonna make
Right.
the builder whole.
So we're just trying to make me whole, right? As a city. So all I do is don't get whole. I take $8.
Yeah, but we're not doing that. You were saying we're doing down payment assistance. And
But I also said it was semantics. It's the same thing. And we're calling it down payment assistance.
so we are doing a reduced purchase price.
Yeah, we're calling it down payment assistance so that the sale price can be higher. So the sale price can be actually what it costs to build, so that it is a sustainable building process.
What that's doing is just helping the appraisal values creep up.
I get
Right.
that, and that makes
Yeah.
sense. I just
Yeah,
don't
that's-
understand.
Because we've come from an average of 170, I think it was 3,000 or 4,000 on Midtown 2, and the houses were a little bit bigger. And just from what I've started, and I get in with the appraisals, and we get the ones sold, we brought them up to 191,000 right now. And then we have over on 6th Street, one just appraised for 188,000. So we're getting them to come up, but it's just because it's a process. It's going to take time. But from I understand what Frank is saying is we're keeping the sale at the 250, but you're just taking 230 or 220 for the house. But that can now be used as a comp because they close with the bank at 250. So now the next house that's done, and they do their search for the comps, they can use that as a comp at 250, even though it really sold for 230. The banks can use it at 250 because that's what it closed at.
Well, that's where I'm getting lost at, is when you're saying the bank's still paying us $250, but if the purchaser is
No,
Only
they're not. They're
$230.
paying us. Yeah,
Yeah.
So like if you've ever bought a house, the settlement's all done on paper, right? So it'll say he bought it from me for 230, and then there'll be a seller or 250, and then there'll be a seller concession, which is the down payment assistance. That'll be an R line item. It'll be a negative number.
okay.
But we'll
So the
only
down
pay
payment
the
assistance would be the form of a seller's concession.
yes,
Mhm.
yeah. So but we'll still only pay for the house one time. So once we've paid the builder to build it, now any money that comes in is just us trying to recoup our investment in the house. So any hit we take on it from down payment assistance or price reduction or whatever it is, it all goes in that same column. But the big thing is we want the top line to say the true cost to purchase that house, so that when somebody else comes by and buy it, he doesn't automatically get the same discount as an income qualified person.
Yeah, yeah. No, that all makes sense. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah, sorry.
So it's just a seller's concession is how we're getting
Yeah.
that. Okay.
That's why I said it was more semantics. I'm just calling it down payment assistance. But it's like a seller concession is exactly what it is.
But that way it satisfies the line on the bank statement saying that the house is at the higher value, so that the
And
the comps are kept up. The individual coming in can
and-
have a benefit of beginning to realize an equity stake.
and Onita is not here, but that's how like one of our home houses would sell. So what would happen is on a home house, say you get an appraisal and it's $200,000, and then I come as an income qualified person with with the income statement saying that I can afford 120, the house sells at the appraised value, and then the gap is what the down payment assistance, covers. And then depending on how big that down payment assistance is, it goes on to a secondary lien on the house, and it disappears over 5 years or 10 years or 3 years, just depending on the size of it.
So is there going to be a cap on the extent of the seller's concession?
I would say the cap is only going to be as much as you want them to be affordable, right? So like we could say it's $5,000 or bust. But the affordability, the idea that if we cap it at 80 to 120, you're going to be hovering around 120 for most of your buyers. If you want to get closer to those 80s or 70s or those 60s, then some of those buyers you're going to have to, right? You're just going to have to take a bigger one. I think for us, it's a collective look at it and say, just like we did with Midtown Square phase 2 and 1, I've got a big spreadsheet that I track that shows, okay, what it costs us to build each of these. What did we get from it? Right, and what was the loss or the subsidy, and how long do I think it takes before we recoup that? And what we might say is the average can be like 7%. I'll make up a number. If the average can be 7%, and we're consistently going at 4%, 4%, 4%, it allows us to say, hey, you know what? Let's try to target a more modest buyer, because now we have some room in there because the other house is sold so well. And I think Midtown Square phase 2 almost did that. When we sold the first 6 houses, we were going, oh geez, we're subsidizing these too much. It's going to be troublesome. And then we sold the 10 townhouses. They almost made the project go right back to even by the time it was all said and done. And that shows you difference. So we were able to use the income that was generated by not subsidizing the townhouses, and we were able to subsidize the houses a little bit more.
So are we going to differentiate though between someone at a higher AMI versus lower AMI in terms of the amount of subsidy that they could potentially get? So that, someone that's at the upper limit of the AMI, could they get the exact same dollar amount subsidy that someone that's at half that AMI?
I would say we would try not to do that. It'll come down to how well the houses are selling too, generally speaking, right? It'll still also track with the market. We have staff has been working on this idea that we could break people into tiers, and you probably see it in here when you get a chance to read my manager's report. But if you look on some of these, it would say like, hey, we'll give down payment assistance more if you're in tier 3, and less if you're in tier 4, and even less if you're in tier 5, for example. And those are all broken down by income range. This is a draft, but for example, like maybe somebody that's in 180 to 120 might be eligible for a 10% discount, for example. But somebody that's in the 51 to 80 might be eligible for a 15% discount. And a 121 to 200 might be 3%, and then somebody over 200 might be 0. But like I said, it's still a little bit. I don't know. Premature is not the right word. We're going to have to see these as they present themselves. That's going to be the hard part, is because we don't know what we don't know what the makeup of the proposed buyers is even going to be. So we might not get very many that are in the lower income bracket at all. We might find that we're satisfying those folks with quality rentals, and that's where they're preferring to be right now.
Vice Mayor, anything?
I think we went over it.
Okay. Commissioner? Very good. I did want to mention this morning I went to my coalition meeting for Michigan Municipal League and Urban Core Mayors, and we've established with our city business collaborative ARP coalition to help influence and inform state ARP funds coming in to get the most bang for our buck, throughout the state, municipalities, townships, counties, and the like. As we were discussing ARP, one of the MML staff had mentioned that our housing programming will become a part of a ongoing study, because it's making much positive waves in Lansing, statewide and in different groups for who housing is, paramount in their mission, and it's one of the missions of the Michigan Municipal League. So I thought I would let you know that the goal or the intent after their investigation and study of what we've been doing since Midtown 1, there's every intention of seeing how this becomes a model throughout the state of Michigan. And kudos to Frank and all the involved staff and our partners, because the spotlight is on you statewide as well as going nationally because of this type of initiative. So I just wanted to bring that forward after today's meeting and hearing those wonderful accolades and kudos from 10 urban mayors and a total of about 50 of us, major business enterprises throughout the state that are really focused on the great work going on here in Muskegon, not just the housing program, but our progress overall, and the dynamism of what we're achieving here in Muskegon. So kudos to everybody that is involved. Just an aside. Anything else for Mr. Duzendang or Frank? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not for Mr. Duzendang, but thank you for being here, making yourself available.
Absolutely.
And, nice work thus far in your partnerships with the city of Muskegon, and looking forward to further growing the city in collaboration with you. Couple things with the AMI. We had talked before, or it came up. I know Commissioner Dermott had brought it up last month, and others, about where that proper upper threshold should be, and wondering, given the subsidy or the seller's concession or whatnot, if it wouldn't be more reasonable to bring that down to 100%, less than 125% of the county AMI, because that is significantly greater than the city AMI. And so if we want to keep a portion of these accessible and affordable to folks within our city, we want to build housing for everyone, including people that don't live here, and invite them into our city, but make sure that there's opportunities for our current residents who might be renting and want to buy, or might want to be looking to move into something that's a little bit bigger or nicer, or in their preferred neighborhood or something. If bringing that AMI threshold down, the county AMI that we're using, down to 100%, would help support that, then, because and particularly if we're not differentiating on the subsidy between someone at 125% versus someone's at 70%, that's another reason why I think it would be prudent to bring the AMI down to 100% in terms of who we're providing that subsidy to, because at 125%, a one person household, that's $57,000, versus at 70% is $32,000, and the 70% of the county AMI is pretty comparable with 100% of our city AMI, and so it's just kind of doesn't sit quite well, a little bit unsettling that someone that twice what our city AMI could get a subsidy comparable to someone that's at that lower AMI for the city. And that's what I was wondering, if it is reasonable to bring that down, that upper threshold of the AMI, and who's getting subsidized or who's getting the seller concession, down to 100%.
Yeah, I would say you just have to reconcile that with with what I could tell you were getting at earlier, is how much are we going to have to subsidize these? If you're going to lower that, then you can expect that you're going to have to subsidize them more. So you're going to have to balance that with your desire to get more of this money back to reinvest it into other ARPA needs, whether they're parks or something else. So it really will be a balancing act. One thing that I think that's probably a way deeper discussion to have than right here, because it's hard for us to get the data that we need to really have this discussion. Is in some ways I would question, the idea of trying to equate that countywide AMI versus ours. And the only reason I say that is because, in our AMI, there's a significant portion of our AMI folks that are not going to be buyers here, and they're part of the reason why it is artificially low, right? We do have a lot of people in our community that don't have income at all, but they're also not going to be buyers of these homes. We have a lot of people in our community that live at 20% or below of the AMI, and they're not going to be buyers of these homes. And we have a lot of people that are on Section 8 housing in this community, and they're not going to be buyers of these homes. And I think the reason why that 120 level makes sense is because those are the people that are likely to be able to be buyers of these homes. If you aim much lower than that, I think you're setting us, especially if you designate a 50% of the houses, for example, to that. I think you're kind of setting the program up for failure, just because a lot of the folks that are below that number, they're probably not in a position, nor were they in a position to buy these homes. A lot of those are the folks that are buying, 80, 90, 100, $110,000 homes now, and they were the bread and butter of what was here in Muskegon over the last 15 years, right? Because houses were just artificially cheap here. For you can name 1,000 reasons why housing was so cheap here, but that contributed in part to why we have a lower AMI than the countywide, because our city has historically been very affordable. So people moved here because it was affordable. We're not taking any of those houses away. Those houses still remain, and they're still affordable, especially relatively speaking to the other communities that surround us. But we still can continue to lag in the ability to provide housing for working families that make a moderate income, and that's really what this is focused on. And there are, of all walks of life, there are those, and nowadays, a single person making $52,000 or $53,000, that number that you had,
57.
That should kind of be in our wheelhouse. That's maybe a recent college grad, or that's a single teacher that's been on the job for a few years. Those are very much people who they don't ever get food assistance when they need it because they don't qualify. They don't ever get housing vouchers because they don't qualify. They don't have a lot of the other things that are made available to the folks that are more our median income.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be careful to try to lower it down too far, because like I said, I think that if you look at our income numbers, right, if you pull up Ken's income tax numbers from the audit, and you look at how many filers there were and how much income was generated, it tells you the average household that filed for income taxes was like $70,000 of residents, not non-residents, but of residents. Mm-hmm. So it tells us that there's two different numbers that are kind of at play there.
That's per household?
Well, it was per filing. So presumably people filed together in the same household.
So, yeah, married. Okay. I was wanting to put it in perspective. Yeah, because the three person, we're looking at 73,000 at 125%.
Yeah. So could have kids in the household too. But I was just saying, if you looked at it, it's like on page 127 our audit, and it said, okay, this is how much income was generated by residents who live in the city, and this is how many filers there were. You just divide the one into the other and just get a mathematical average. I know it's not the same as a median. You'll see that there are a lot of folks here that earn in that 80 to 120 or 80 to 125. Mm-hmm. But I think we miss them because we are and have been so affordable for people who have very, very, very little income. And you don't, like, if you were probably to count up all the Section 8 vouchers that are used in Muskegon County, I bet you would find 80% of them here in the city limits. That's good that we accommodate for them, but those folks are included in our median income. Mm-hmm. And like I said, none of those, maybe I guess there could be a couple of them, but probably somewhere around none of those are candidates for buying these houses.
And if I may, going back and during that period of the artificial suppression of any value in this city, when Mr. Dusendag did his survey, and it backed up our survey too, what's going for affordable for too many decades here wasn't necessarily what you would call good or quality housing. Unfortunately, you could get into a house for $20, 30 some $1,000, but it needed $100,000 worth of work. And even the condition of rentals in our history, you wouldn't want to rent in some of those places. And luckily, over the past decade or so, the quality of rentals has gone up. So by introducing new quality housing, safe housing, that forces the existing market not necessarily to raise their prices, but to raise the quality of the place that they're leasing out or renting out, so that they can compete in the market. And what we've seen nationwide is that new rental construction does not necessarily, in many cases, drive the cost up in the rest of the market, because the existing folks that own those rental units have to stay competitive, and unfortunately some of them haven't been maintaining their properties up to snuff beyond the base minimum. But I think with the introduction of continued quality and safe housing, I think it benefits us all, especially for homeowners. And we've seen the examples throughout the years. Some folks would buy a house in what we would have called our more transitional or marginal neighborhoods, and the value never increased. As a matter of fact, it went backwards in 2008. And how many of us suffered a slash of half of the value of our houses in 2008. I know I did, on Palmer Avenue up in Nims. So where was the opportunity for wealth building or wealth transfer? And when you talk to folks now in Nelson, where our projects first started, some of those folks are seeing the value of their homes increasing finally for their golden years, and the potential to pass off that wealth to their kids. I was in Myers a few weeks ago. A woman turned around and said, "You can't hide behind that mask. I know who you are." And she said, "I just want to let you know, myself and a few of my other neighbors are taking care of what we have in McLaughlin on Pine Street, because what you're doing downtown and around downtown, because that's given us pride. And we want to show our pride in the hard work that so many people are doing." And then she said, "By the way, I love the rehab project a few doors down from me. Because now I'm telling my kids, don't be yelling at your mother about putting money into this house. Because when your grandma gave it to me, it was worth nothing. Now it's worth plenty. For when it's time for me to take some value out of it, or if you behave, pass it on to you, and it'll be worth cash." So she said, "Thank you very much for all these efforts that you're putting through." So that's what I'm hearing, from folks, in and around the neighborhoods and in and around where these initiatives, are taking place. So I just throw that out for your consideration.
With regard to,
Did you have something?
Oh, I just had a question about the conversation.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the 125% of AMI, what's the decision point for that? Like, where is that regarding this program? I mean, these are tiers, but this is like something different, right? This
that's
is an
something
approach. So, I mean,
I think from our standpoint, it'd be easy to go to the same standard we had in the infill housing, which was, I think, 120%. I mean, that's some consistency. And I wonder if Dave can maybe tell us how many of his renters are that he knows of, at least, that are below that 120 number, and tell you how important it is maybe to fill that number.
I don't have that. I don't have that at this time. That's once we hit that number 25, then we can put it together, and that's what I wanted to bring to the commission. Show how the first phase is working, and it's working well. We've got everything running. And what's not done, we still have pre-leased.
So maybe this is a conversation for like another time as we develop this ARP info housing program to determine those types of things. We did that for the infill program, but it sounds like we're gonna be discussing that as part of this.
Yeah, I think maybe as we bring the actual development agreements to the commission in the coming weeks, we'll have at least a staff proposal as to where we think the income levels should, the caps for assistance should be, or the quotas that we want to meet in terms of how many we want to sell to those folks. I think that's a good time to have it.
Yeah, because I think we kind of gotta flush it out and kind of understand the spreadsheet a little bit better so we can understand how this will work and what we're actually buying here.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up, at the last meeting under any other business and tonight, so that it's not a shock when you bring the development agreement and you have a number in there and we're like, hold up, so that you can explore that and discuss that with staff and decide, is there room and reason for adjustment there, so it can be done well in advance. With regard to the question of whether to commit more funding from our ARPA dollars to this right off the bat, which sounds like you want another 1.75 million to bring it to 6.75. I guess I'm of the mind to keep it at the 5 million. This is the expectation. This is going to be an ongoing program that, as we are seeing proceeds put back into it, we will then extend out to build more, and we can continue working with our partners like Mr. Dusneg and others to build those additional homes. But 6.75 million right off the bat, that's almost a third of our entire allotment of ARPA dollars. That's a lot going into that. So I would be of the mind to keep it at the $5 million that we set out to do for this program, knowing that we're going to be reinvesting the proceeds on an ongoing basis.
I'd like to speak to that because the ARPA money is not like a revolving loan. So if we invest $5 million, we put the $5 million into that, that's $5 million spent. It's not revolving. So I propose the money we get from the sales go back to the public improvement fund.
Our understanding was, yes, it's going to the public improvement fund, but to continue building more houses.
Yeah, but it's not ARPA money at that point.
No, it's not.
Okay,
but,
I just want.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to use too much of our ARPA dollars right off the bat. We're going to be putting this $5 million as we had set out to do, and that's going to be recycled. It's not going to be going back into that state and federal grant fund.
Correct.
It's going into the public improvement fund with the expectation that that's where we built the other houses previously from.
Okay, I just want to make sure that the ARPA and the public improvement funds are separate. So once we approve that $5 million, that's gone from the ARPA. It's not going to go like we sell that and then we got 1 million back, and that's ARPA money that we could re-spend. No, we can't do that.
Yeah, no, that's gone and going to be sticking with that kind of programming.
Yeah, I just want a clarification.
Should we create a new fund, though, so that there isn't any confusion within the public improvement fund? Should we create a designated fund to handle these dollars so that we know this is coming back, the proceeds are coming back, we're going to extend it out and just keep this program going as long as we can to build as many houses as we can until...
I don't know if we need to do it because the public improvement fund is just kind of a collective of all the money we have in there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are like, it's a one-time generational thing that we could do. We could build these houses and put money back into our public improvement fund, which is kind of lacking right now anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why I don't. My preference would be due to the fact that we've got a one shot at using the ARPA funds. Take the 1.7, especially additionally because it will come back to us. Maybe not in total, depending on how much we want to subsidize, but this gives us the opportunity to really focus on that higher and wider build out. They're one-time funds when it's called ARPA, but the way it's designed, we're bringing the money back in from sales, hopefully recoupment from the brownfields, etc. And that's the beauty of it.
Even if we lose, we could, the way that we had it set up, we could get that money from the scattered brownfield. So even if we sell it at a loss, I mean, this is going to be this is crazy. It's going to be very difficult to track all this stuff, but
it's crazy.
But it's a win-win for the
Crazy
city.
genius.
It's crazy genius, but like I said, we're gonna have to track it, and it's in a scattered brownfield with ARPA money that we could put back into our public improvement. It's a
That
A lot of moving parts.
Yes, and if I could, I think that would be my only argument to putting more into it instead of recycling, because you can clean the money to a different source, so to speak, and then it still goes to public improvement fund, and pretty much anything that we wanted to spend ARPA dollars on that was on our list over here, whether it was a park improvement or or investment in art museum or the Boys and Girls Club or most any of those things could be funded directly out of the public improvement fund once the dollars have been used. Because the cool thing about ARPA is like Ken said, program income does not have the same strings attached to it as the original allotment. So it allows us to have more flexibility, and maybe something on our ARPA list didn't quite fit in, and we were wondering how it was going to fit in. And now we found a way to to make sure that the net proceeds can fit it in a little bit easier.
It's no longer ARPA, it's
Program
improvement.
yeah. That's all I wanted to say.
Right. Commissioner Emery?
yeah, I guess I didn't think about that. I thought it was just going to go back into the ARPA funds. So, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you remember, we said the goal was build houses, and then when we're done building houses, or we think we hit the critical mass, push it towards something like parks, something that then has another big impact on the neighborhoods and the people that live in there. But it doesn't mean that it funnels back through the ARPA fund or the state.
Yeah, I guess I
grant
just
fund
assumed it goes back to the ARPA funds. So, all right.
So
And
what?
that's where that type of creativity, really comes to bear for, long-term benefit. Because when it comes to ARPA here, you say you're going to spend it on an ARPA thing, and it's a one-time shot. That's it. One time you bought a splash pad. That's it. The way our spending is being designed is to be able to, spend it where we can potentially recoup, the monies, and those monies come back in for, 10, 20, 30 years of, ongoing, beneficial, use for the community, be it our park system and the like not floating a bond, paying cash, but then capturing money, let's say, from the convention center and getting that splash pad, at some point, and making sure that our recreational parks are maintained through the next couple of decades, and then programs such as this with the flexibility to utilize it for other public improvements.
Yeah, it would be in the same vein as what we're doing with the convention center, what we're doing with the rail line of taking this lump sum and converting it into ongoing income streams going forward many, many years. The question, though, is the previous presentation had all of the ARPA dollars allocated, and we had demands exceeding those allocations. And so if you're now going to commit another 1.75 million to this program, what program or programs that were going to receive allocations in the previous presentation are no longer going to be funded?
Yeah, I think that's for this group to decide, but I can think of one right off the top, and that's revenue replacement for the general fund. Because
No.
well, no, it's not a no, because I think Ken's gonna be able to show you that we don't qualify for any because we didn't have any sustained revenue losses, which is good, which is a really good thing. And I think
So that's gone to zero now?
Well, we used 300,000 last year.
Why have to put it back because we didn't have
We ended up not having any revenue replacement for our general fund?
There's a formula that we have to use that was assigned to us, and we put the formula in, and there's not a qualified revenue loss.
Oh, wow, because I thought we were going to end up benefiting because they said you could project it forward. If you were on a good trajectory and you were increasing it year over year over year, you could project it forward, and that gap or that difference you could count as, but it wasn't much or anything actually?
They use the projection of 4% increase. We got so much federal and state revenue monies, and our income tax and our property tax are way better than we projected. That we actually made our revenue increase was too high to qualify.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, this is one of the best years. Income tax was the best year ever.
I think
Property taxes are higher than last year. We got a lot of federal and state revenues from corona relief. We just got so much money in last year. It was just,
Okay. So that's a good thing that we have.
that's a good
Are
thing,
we
yeah.
doing maximum revenue replacement for the arena and the farmers market then?
no, tomorrow I'm bringing. Well, there's one thing that I had to ask for more money for the public safety building because we
Public
put
service building.
public service building. I'm sorry, we had to put the public service building because we had to put some pension costs in there that we never had to in the last couple years. So I asked for an increase in transfer for that, but other like the farmers market, I had to put less money in there. I had to put a little more into the arena, of course, but other areas were lower than expected.
In terms of what we could replace.
As far as transfer requests from the general fund.
Yeah,
No,
there's an opportunity, I think, to have revenue replacement in the arena. There's an opportunity to have revenue replacement at the farmers market. I think part of the problem with that's going to be is that Pete and Mike got us awarded a separate shuttered site allocation, which was over $600,000, which we've already received, and a likelihood that I think we can get another $300,000 and some change as part of that as well. So then I think it'd be hard. We'd almost be double dipping. They've replaced our revenue in this pot of money, and it'd be hard to replace it again. But we could look and see if there are more losses. Maybe this year, maybe something comes out and their attendance is reduced again or something.
Mm-hmm.
We'd be able to take some for next year. But as it stands right now, I think like all of our funds, I think it speaks to the sustainability of the community. They all held their own throughout the virus. To our surprise, I guess, and happy surprise, but to our surprise, especially the income tax, it shows you how strong the local income taxes are right now, and I think it speaks to how much money people that live here are making compared to maybe what they were, because we never could collect on the unemployment, right? So I mean, all the unemployment that flowed through the city, none of that added to our income generation, but yet we still generated over $9 million in income taxes.
Commissioner?
I guess I'd be open to passing the resolution for the 6.75 with some of the information. Also, I mean, I do echo what the mayor said about, this is a critical issue, and I think we've been able to demonstrate through a lot of innovation how much we've been able to get done in terms of addressing the housing shortage. And I'm not saying for sure. I think we should look at the development agreement that Frank brings back, and maybe a point of discussion is we'll dial it back to 5 million or something. But I do think, we have an opportunity to continue to really hit an issue and make a transformation that is hard to argue with. And I think we should pass the resolution to go to the 6.75 and see what happens. Like I said, maybe it comes back, but my hunch is that when you author or that we allocate more money, that it'll become more efficient. And I think that's what's benefited our city and through these programs is that we've done not one or two, but 30 or 40, and that's really been able to transform the community. So I support that.
Okay.
And I know it sounds like we're moving on, but one more anecdotal thing that we looked at as we were kind of putting together these proposals, the state equalized value of the MSI property that we bought, that was a parcel we bought that we built the original Midtown Square project on. The SEV at the time we bought it was like $13,000. Today, the SEV of the 9 houses that sit there is $900,000. And now, granted, those ones we did have NEZs on, so they're paying a reduced tax on that, so they're not paying the full freight on $900,000. But shoot, we're 6 years into that now, so they're all halfway through with those, and so that'll be. You can see how impactful you can be when you take a, a block that was, that had an SEV, like I said, of $13,000 and make it worth $900,000, which is about half of the true cash. So $1.8 million of housing there. And then we started looking at, because we haven't tracked the sales there. And one thing that we noticed was that just recently, a house that we bought and sold for, I think, $160,000 a few years ago on Houston, just sold earlier this year for $230,000. So probably didn't go to an affordable person, but we helped somebody create some generational wealth right there. And they probably were an affordable candidate, because the only people that really bought there, aside from a couple of retirees, were people that were either young professionals or in the affordability category. So I don't know where they moved to. Hopefully they stayed in the city, but they still generated some. So we saw some positive wealth generation even off of phase one already.
And I think another point to make too, I know that sometimes it's brought up, well, as our taxable values go up, does that push existing people, into an uncomfortable level? But, remember, property taxes are suppressed by headland Proposal A. And so not all of us are, in our existing houses, since that, have come about, are paying what used to be full freight, and that's left to the next person when they come buy our house when I'm ready to downsize. Final comments, observations, Commissioner German?
Yeah, and that's good that property values are going up. Equity in homes are available for homeowners, and as Commissioner Johnson was talking about, the AMI that we're using. I would like, when these proposals come back, I would like to see how we can kind of maybe look at how we could adjust them or just kind of tweak them and see if there's leverage or room to say, hey, okay, we can make it affordable for us and give some of these residents who may be in a position now to have an opportunity to purchase homes. Now, the economy is still pretty stable, I guess. But a lot of the people that's buying these homes are not people that live in these neighborhoods. Some of them that I met are pretty much from out of town, different areas. And that's the part that concerns me, because you grow up in a neighborhood, you lived here all your life, and you rent, but then there's opportunities for new homes, and you don't have the opportunity to purchase it because you're not at the level, don't have the means and the income to do it, because you're not making the amount of money or the dollars due to what the houses are being sold for. So therefore, these people are going to rent or be forced out to live somewhere else. So I'd like to see, what it would look like if when these proposals come back, made some adjustments just to see affordable, moderate homes at a price where somebody making $70,000 or a family making $70,000 possibly could afford something like that. I mean, I just came back from Washington, D.C., on the voting rights issue. And one of the things Al Sharpton talked about, and I think everybody knows Reverend Al Sharpton, we talked about our voting rights, but we also talked about the fair housing practices. And, there were people getting evicted and put out of homes down there. Reverend Barber, who is with the Poor People Campaign. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's very active down there. Barbara Lee Jackson spoke. It's a crisis, in this nation, and people are homeless. But if the government is in a position, and I understand the business and trying to sell them the cost of construction, and you try to, sell for what, you can. I understand that, but it's also a group of underserved people that cannot afford this. And how can we make it affordable? Doing to some of the projects and working with some of the builders that we're working with. So I just like to see us look at it and have something presented to us and see if we went this route, maybe a few of them may be affordable. I don't know.
And that's what I like about the idea of trying to go to a tiered system and quit
Mhm.
saying it's affordable housing, because affordable might be different to me than to you, than to Teresa, than to Ken. And this idea that if we can tier them in a way and say this is a tier 1 affordable house or a tier 2 or a tier 3, that might not mean anything to the average person, but it help us really um, narrow in on affordability levels,
Right.
and say, this is supposed to be this is meant to be affordable at above 80%, or this is meant to be affordable at below 60%. And then you can see how different they are, like where the Berkshire is quite a bit more affordable than High Point Flats, for
Right.
example.
Right. And like I said, I do understand that. And the city's not in the business of just giving anything away. People have to work, and position themselves too. But if you have an opportunity, and it presents itself, maybe it may be a chance where someone could purchase a home and have that opportunity.
And we can use the tools that we have, and face it, our tools are very limited, even though they're very creative, because people are still going to have to qualify from a mortgage lender or a bank or whatnot, and those are topics that we have to keep on beating on the doors in state houses and state legislatures and at the federal level, to look at, where are the inequities in lending. We don't even have a damn bank presence in town anymore. So some of these efforts are, a big we thing that we have to do locally, statewide, and nationally, to see where we can start experiencing, more fairness out of our lending institutions and our investment institutions, for the sake of the communities that they supposedly serve.
Yeah. A lot of barriers.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else, commissioners? Then let us move on to. Thank you, Mr. Duzendane.
Welcome. You tired?
Item number 4, arena build out.
All right. So I think this one's pretty simple, but I didn't want to surprise everybody with it on the full agenda without talking about it. So Carlisle's is obviously doing their own build out. They've got financing lined up. They've got their contractor on board and ready to start. We have a couple things that kind of led us down to the path that makes me feel like we should be contracting with the contractor, and they should be paying us after we pay the contractor. So we essentially act as a pass-through, and there are a number of reasons for that. One of which is we're pushing really hard up against the deadline that we're obligated to fulfill to the Lumberjacks. We can't have a negative impact onto their season, and we're running really close up to the deadline for their opening weekend, and it's causing a little bit of concern with their ownership. And so one of the things that one of the reasons why we want to be standing in place of the contractor is we want to be able to hold them to some deadlines. To give you an example, the bathrooms are mostly gutted right now, and it's a little bit of a mess in there. But the Lumberjacks have a preseason game on Wednesday, and then they have one on Friday, and they have one on Saturday. And so it's really important to us that we're managing the project, making sure that it's being accountable to tenants like the Lumberjacks and to tenants like Rad Dads, but most importantly to the Lumberjacks. At the same time, is technically, if you read through the lease that we have with Carlisle's, it says that they shouldn't start construction until after the liquor license has been finalized. Well, the liquor license was supposed to be finalized a week ago. It was supposed to be finalized 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to be finalized 3 weeks ago. And we finally got to the point where if we didn't start, at least on the demolition, even before I could get in front of you guys, there was no way they were going to be able to have it cleaned up and ready to go by the start of the season, which would then push us back into next spring again. That's kind of the cycle that we've been up against. So we finally told their demo contractor to pull the trigger on starting to clear out the bathrooms the rest of the way, and that I would come to this commission and say we'll stand in the place of Carlisle's. So Carlisle's doesn't officially start construction. We do. And then we turn it over to them and they write us a check essentially as the construction is being completed. Andy Harris did provide me with all the bank information that shows that they're all approved. We followed up with their lender to get verification that they have the resources to pay this, and the lender is agreeable to this. We talked to the builders, who happen to be Platinum, which Dave just left, but he probably could answer the question because he's a partner in Platinum. But they are confident that the build out is probably 8 weeks, but on the far side, 10 weeks. So really, by the time the contractors, we might make one payment to the contractor halfway through, and by the time we're making the second payment to the contractor, we should have certificate of occupancy, and we should be moving Carlisle's in and collecting their check to pay for it. But I didn't want to go this route without making sure that the commission was on board with it, because it will show up on our books. So it'll show up as an expense. It'll show up as a revenue to offset the expense. And I thought that it was very prudent that we talk about it. If we can be agreeable to move in this direction, it would help us get it done on time.
And the main thing that's holding us up right now is the issuance of the DDA liquor license.
Yep, it's very complicated, for lack of better terms. We've gone back and forth with all the attorneys involved on how it needs to work, and I think the path we decided on last week was finally, let's go ahead and get the license approved as it is, and then file. So, you guys remember we authorized us to transfer to a DDA license, I don't know, about 2 years ago. Well, we haven't actually completed that yet. We were sitting kind of in purgatory at the LLC because there were some questions on their part that almost were unanswerable. And so we got to the point now where everything's been answered. And then at the same time, we finally got everything answered and they're ready to process. We're going, oh, wait a minute. We want to add another restaurant, and another user. And they finally said, okay, time out. Let's just get the DDA license approved. And then the day it's approved, then you file to add Carlisle's, to it. So it's almost like one thing that we talked about doing here, that LLC will only take so many things on their agenda. So if the list gets piled, and you're on the back of the list, it really doesn't matter if you have all your stuff and you sit in the queue. If they're only going to hear like 6 cases, at a meeting, they're only going to hear 6 cases. They're not going to add you on just because you're ready to go. And so we're sitting kind of back in that queue waiting for our turn. And it's just taking a little bit longer, some of which is our fault. Some, there's many of fingers to point, but we are where we are. And we're very comfortable that we'll get it done by the opening day of the Lumberjacks game. But it only does us any good if we're done and the restaurant's ready to open the front doors, and accommodate the fans. So that was probably too much explanation to say. I'd like to stand as a pass-through for and actually employ Platinum and then recoup the money at time of completion from Carlisle's and the Harris Group. And we do have the money in the bank to do it. I already checked with Ken. It's from the shuttered site. The shuttered venue money is sitting in the arena fund, so it can be temporarily used for this. We won't have a cash flow problem at the arena.
Okay. Commissioner Rinson, Ms. Haven.
So the 647 is for the complete build out of Carlisle, so it'll be like ready to open.
It'll be ready to open. It does. That doesn't include like their furniture, I don't think, and stuff like that. But just the fixed items that will be built in there. We're gonna do a breakdown of this. There's probably somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000 that is work that they're doing for us, because we're having some doors relocated over there that we ultimately will not be reimbursed for, but we'll bring a final proposal for those items to the city commission as well. But they're included in this. They had one cost to do everything. It was just a bit of a economies of scale to have one builder go in there and do it all. They're essentially going to take doors that exist and move them to a new opening. So it's really just a little bit of labor is really all it is.
Vice Mayor, anything?
No.
Commissioner Emmer? No. Commissioner Johnson?
So they could proceed. I know you say that the lease calls for them to begin construction after the DDA liquor license is secured. Is there anything inhibiting them from moving forward prior or beforehand?
Well,
I mean, aside from them just taking that risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the harder part is If it's 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later and they can't open, the idea that they would then be having this $600,000 note sitting there, needing to be paid without being open. We really don't anticipate that being the case. But again, part of it is timing too for us. Like at the end of the day, we're the ones that are beholden to the lumberjacks, right? To make sure that when they open their front doors for the season, that the doors are actually there, which they're not there right now. So in part, it's us feeling comfortable that we're going to push the project forward, and Platinum will be accountable to us, not necessarily to the new tenant. And so it probably at the end of the day, we should have done it this way anyway, just because it's our building and we'd want to make sure. Good example, their builder went in there and did some stuff on Friday in the mid-morning time, and it caused Rad Dads to lose their water at like 10 a.m. They didn't get their water back, I think, till like 1 o'clock. And so those kinds of things, I think we can pay closer attention to by having our people on there. And at the end of the day, we're responsible to Rad Dads, not them. And so when those errors are made, we're the ones that are accountable. We just want to be the ones that are standing in the position saying, yeah, we made a mistake. It's on us, versus causing potentially that to be between the two restaurant owners.
Yeah, that's all sensible. So if we proceed with this and build it out, and the liquor license is secured, there's no option for them to still exit or say, well, we've changed our mind. I mean, we don't expect that, but there's
no.
Okay.
No, I mean, I guess stranger things have happened. They've worked on this for like 2.5 years, and the idea that they would get it all done and walk away from it knowing that 6 other restaurant owners would love to have the spot. I think just from that alone would keep them interested in it. But I would also say, if for some reason that very, very unthinkable, unlikely thing happened, we'd be in a pretty good position to either A, operate it, which we don't want to do, or B, find a new tenant for it.
I would agree with that. So we have the money sitting in there, but we don't have because we're also tomorrow on the agenda is asking us to transfer more money from our general fund to the arena fund. So after we subtract this amount, we are then in need for more funding from our general fund to fill the gap.
So I would say that that money that Ken's asking you to send was for last fiscal year to keep it balanced. It's not necessarily related.
So the audit has discovered that there's more money needing to be funded. Okay.
Yep, there's more money needed for the year that ended on June 30th. That's correct, Ken?
Gotcha.
Yes.
Actually, yes. That's good enough.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'm good.
All right. Thank you. Anything to close this out, or are we closed out? We can move on to.
Oh yeah, Mike's thing. This time why you just skip Mike.
Right.
Although Mike skipped us, it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, he's You're ready for him.
You're up.
Hello, sir. Good evening, Mr. Franzik.
Good evening. Well, we actually have Jill Montgomery Keast here from Health West. So, Public Health, I'm sorry.
Yeah, she's kitty corner across the street.
So, we can have her touch on how well we will be spending our funding for the educational portion of the Muskegon Social Equity Program.
We have this.
Oh, okay, cool. That's it.
Was it?
Yeah. We'll try and make this fun. It's gonna not next, you guys, right?
Never.
All right. As you know, I work for Public Health Muskegon County. We've been getting funding from the state for
Can I have you
marijuana.
get closer to the mic.
We've been getting funding for. Closer yet? Am I too tall? Bend way over? Okay.
No.
All right. We've been getting funding from the state for marijuana licenses since 2019. Public Health Muskegon County. There's been money coming into the state or into the county since 2016 for medical marijuana licenses. It's been going to the county too, but it went for law enforcement. In 2019, we discovered that they couldn't do that. It had to go to education and outreach. So it came over to public health. We've been getting, last year's funding was around $35,000, which isn't a lot. It was a lot more before, but now that we have recreational around, the numbers are going down a little bit. However, we've been doing education outreach with that money. Keep in mind, public health is never abstinence-based. We are not anti-marijuana. We try and stay very neutral on it. We do like to do things that are harm reduction focused. Kinds of things like making sure that kids don't get a hold of it, making sure that pregnant women don't use it, making sure that you're not overusing it or operating machinery or trying to go to work or get a job and failing a urine screen, those kinds of things. We want you to be successful. We want you to be careful with what you're doing. It's legal. We have to face that. Abstinence-based programs don't work. So what I really wanted to show you is what we've been doing with the money. You remember the big billboards you see around town that said lock up your marijuana? Mm-hmm. We're not doing that anymore. After the last administration, to be honest with you, we don't want to lock up anything. However, we are still focused on the youth stuff. Yeah, Dan, I knew somebody at least would get that. Yes, so we had those billboards up. We got the money in 2019. We were given notification about 2 weeks before the grant was due. Nobody had a plan. That's the only thing we had. We went with that. We got a little brighter the next year around. We actually did a survey. We had 117 participants, marijuana users, actually respond to a survey that we had where we asked things like attitudes, use, how they talk to children about it, maybe their own children about it, what kinds of things they thought would be impactful as far as listening to messages that came from us. And we came up with a lot better things than lock her up. If you can see in 2020 on the slide, we actually developed a website called Cannabis Facts 4, the number 4, UYOU.com. You can go out there and look. We have that going with all factual information that's on it. We try and stay extremely neutral with it. Matter of fact, we ended up partnering with Roberta King from Cana Communications to help develop it all. So you got the public health end there, you got the pro end on that side, and we work together to make sure that we're developing messages that resonate with the user population. We have that. We have bags. We're working with the provisioning centers and giving them supplies to actually hand out to their customers that have harm reduction messages on them. So we're really pretty excited about it. And we want to know whether or not the city maybe wants to partner with public health in getting some of this information out instead of having to recreate the wheel. So I brought some samples for you. This is pregnancy messaging that we're doing. And yeah, we're trying to be a little bit, okay, public health and government, the messages that we send out are really boring and people usually don't want to pay attention to them. So we're trying to step out just a little bit. This is some of the pregnancy messaging that we're doing. And then on the back is a QR code that, I don't want to forget you, Ann. Thank you. There's a QR code which takes you out to that cannabis factory. Then we've got, those by the way are going to be going out into OBGYN offices. Then we have a bag stuffer. on the bags. These are actually for the provisioning centers. Hang on, that's pretty heavy. These were given out to the provisioning centers, and they're actually putting the product in them. They love them. I think I partnered with almost 11 now that are exist in the county. I'd have to look at the list, but I think we've got pretty much all of them. Then these are some messaging that are going in there. I brought bunches of copies in case you want to take some of these back to the places of work. So check that out. And the other product that we're very proud of, which is focused at the youth piece, the locket bags. One thing that we've noticed in public health, who wants one? One thing we've noticed in public health is that kids,
Thank you.
we're seeing,
Lock up the weed.
I'm gonna lock up different stuff.
Right.
yeah, actually getting into marijuana supplies, especially edibles.
They,
If you're going to keep them in your house, keep them locked up.
right. That's pretty
Yeah, if
neat.
you don't use, give them to somebody that does.
Can I put my money in there so my kids don't take it?
Oh yeah, I'll take one
That's
for
what I
mine.
was thinking. Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Ah,
This one I want.
Perfect. It must be 21 or 40.
Drew and I are working really hard to get some interesting messaging out. Stuff that people will pay attention to. It's not so hokey and silly. We want it to really be fun to look at. The workplace project that we're working on right now. This is the mild-mannered one. Message that we want to put out. This is think before you toke. Cannabis sticks with you even when you're not high. Don't let cannabis get between you and a good job. This is the uncensored one. The message that we're putting together. A little bit of shock value, but it says a lot. So we're stepping way out. This is not traditional for my office to be doing stuff that's way out and edgy, but we think it works. And we just want to know whether or not you want to partner with us. Basically, all that would be involved is throwing what you got to get some advertising out and put your name on it along with ours. Any questions?
Questions, observations for Ms. Montgomery?
Anybody
Keats?
want more? Not what?
And I called up the QR code for the pregnancy information.
We're working really hard to make sure that it's very accurate. We'll update that consistently with information as it comes out.
Okay. Commissioner, anything to say?
I'm supportive of this. I think that we, since we talked about how we were going to spend some of this money through the social equity fund, I mean, this was one of the ideas, and I think it's an important one as we transition to this, era where, I agree. I don't think abstinence is the best strategy, but
Never works.
certainly good education about things that you should be aware of, to be careful and to not take unnecessary risks, and be safe. So I think that I advocated to use some funds from that portion to this endeavor. I think this this looks like a very good campaign. I think I'm glad Muskegon Public Health is taking it on, and I think it would be great to partner with them.
Not too many martinis, not too many tokes. You got to be careful with anything you're ingesting and putting in your body that alters.
Yeah, THC levels are really high. So we're seeing people actually overdose, even though overdosing on marijuana doesn't really kill you, but they are ending up in hospital ER with some real life issues because you can't eat a whole gummy bear. You can only eat the ear off the gummy bear, and if you eat the whole gummy bear, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner RS. Yes, I love this. Thank you. I wondered why these other pages were added on there, and now thank you for explaining why. And I absolutely love the education and the outreach that you're doing, and would love to partner with it.
Great, very cool.
Thank you, Commissioner German.
Just a couple questions, I guess. Have you
Absolutely.
did any workshops or anything like that? Have you done any workshops, or the county done any workshops for the community?
Workshops focused at which
For as
sector?
educating,
In marijuana, no, not really. We are doing a lot having to do with overdose, though. At that, when you're particularly not talking marijuana, but we're talking other drugs, and overdose.
Okay.
Overdose, opioid related
Okay.
overdose. We're doing a lot more education on that. We're sort of sneaking in the back way with this one. Marijuana is a lot different than some of the other drugs that we deal with. I relate it more to alcohol. Now it's legal, and just
Right.
like alcohol, you can use, just don't use too much. Be careful where you use it. Be careful how you use it. Just practice safety, and those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. But what you're seeing as far as education, that's as far as we've gotten so far. We haven't done any big town halls or meetings or anything like that. Every once in a while, we'll go and talk to a community group, but
Okay.
that's really where we're at right now.
Okay. And I guess another next question: when you talk to people, who are you targeting? There's youth, age limits that you're looking at passing this information out to, like high school, junior high students, high
Yeah.
school kids, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
We work with Drug Free Muskegon. Drug Free Muskegon, they are abstinence-based, youth-focused, so no access for minors. And they actually have a project they call Shattering the Myths. And they go out and they do these big presentations in the schools. I won't say it's evidence-based, but it is a way of getting the information out there. They have kids participate in the actual demonstrations of what are good things, what are bad things. Kids that have actually been involved in drugs. The prosecutor attends there. Recovery coaches are there. Those kinds of activities are there. You can view it on YouTube. We have contributed funds. Matter of fact, this last year we contributed funds to helping film that, as well as T-shirts for the kids that participated and those kinds of things. So there is an abstinence-based component to it. However, we don't necessarily concentrate our efforts on that. Public health is harm reduction.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Johnson?
Speaking of harm reduction, you mentioned opioids. With the opiate crisis that we have, is any of your work on helping for potentially helping medicinal cannabis being used to supplant opioids, highly addictive opioids? Is there any work or rapport with doctors to help identify people that may be suitable to get them off those highly addictive opiates, and potentially using cannabis as one piece of the pain relief or pain management program?
I am not a doctor, I'm not a physician, but I will tell you, I heavily embed myself into the research. There's no research that shows that, even though that may be the case. But I only go by what I see as factual studies that I can cite. And I haven't seen that information as of yet, that it's a substitute for anything. I don't necessarily condone either. From my research at this particular point, but as we know more, I'm sure more will come out. There are certain things that we do know that marijuana is good for. There are things like people with glaucoma, people maybe that have epilepsy, those kinds of things, but that's the only research I've seen that's positive. They're very, very positive about that particular correlation.
Yeah, much stronger correlation there. You had actually shared a study with me a couple years ago when we were looking at this topic, and that study actually did speak to where it had benefit. They identified benefit for chronic pain, not so much acute pain. It's not something to be used for acute pain management, but that they showed some benefit for chronic pain. But that's neither here nor there, really, at this point. I was just wondering if any of your mission or any of your efforts are in terms of helping to combat the opioid crisis using cannabis, or
I would never preach use one drug instead of another. Alcohol will kill pain too, but I won't go there.
Word, yeah.
Yeah.
So the expectation is then, is this a request from staff that we're going to be committing? So this is a question for Mr. Franzik. So we've allocated 35% of our social equity programming funding for education and community outreach. And so is this the request that our 35% that we're going towards that is going to be all sent to public health for her mission, or what is the actual ask or request?
Yeah, so we've taken in $112,000 from the excise tax money. 15% of that's supposed to go to harm reduction and education, so that comes out to roughly $5,900. And yeah, I'd be asking that we use that for this year's funding to work with Muskegon County Health.
So there still seems to be some confusion there, and I've corrected it before, but I'll just clarify it again. The amount that the commission approved, because we amended it and changed that, the amount that the commission approved to be used from our social equity program is 35% to go towards education and community outreach, at 35% to go towards facilitating marijuana-related expungement clinics, and 30% to go towards business microloans and grants.
So $112,000, 35% of that is supposed to go to the MSEP. Out of that money, 15% of the money is supposed to go to harm reduction.
No. That's not what the commission approved. I shared that with the minutes to you before. The minutes from our November 26, 2019 meeting reflect what our amended motion was. With, you're correct that 35%, no, actually, it is 35%. We removed the $35,000 cap, and then we adjusted the amounts that are going to those three programs, and the amount going towards education and community outreach was increased from 15% to 35%. So knowing that it's 35%, not 15, is the recommendation still that we're going to be allocate that full amount towards Ms. Montgomery Keith's program and public health program?
Well, yeah, I guess that's going to double our money. How much do you think we could get for $10,000 or $11,000, and what do you think we would be getting?
This is a work in progress. I can give you what it costs me right now to do stuff. I would like to leave it up to you or the planning group, what kinds of things you want to join in on. I mean, if you want your name on the website, I'd love to have you. You can help me pay for it a little bit. If you want to put up billboards, honest to God, $35,000 doesn't cover a lot. And billboards are expensive, and so things like that, you could probably get maybe 4, maybe 5 billboards for.
We're looking at $10,000 or $11,000.
So Mike, you were saying $112,000.
Yes.
How much goes to the
35% of that.
Okay.
$39,200.
Okay, and then 35% of that number goes. Okay.
Correct. Not the 15. So that we're looking at
13,720.
Yeah, James.
We can talk about details a little bit I'm not too concerned about
I don't
that.
think it's outrageous to give it to the
Really just
public health.
like to be able to take this stuff and say,
I would just,
hey, we're already doing this.
Yeah.
You have to do it. Do you want to do it together?
Yeah,
That's all
and
I'm
for
saying.
sure.
It makes sense for us to partner with you than trying to reinvent the wheel and come up with our own
Absolutely.
We're
program.
all saying the same thing.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know how you do the approval process for items, like, do you really want your name on that, you know,
That's a
certain item? But we'll have to figure that out, how that looks.
yeah, I think I would say I don't know that we necessarily need our name on it. But I mean, if we're contributing to the programming, whatever the programming
I'd like to be
is.
able to endorse like the website at the bottom. I'd like
Yeah.
to
Yes,
say
Yeah.
on that.
Acknowledge.
is involved in those kinds of things.
Right.
This is really smart. This edibles, like to the novices, the person that doesn't know what they're like, even the people that do know what they're doing or have had it in the past, like you can get carried away and get accident. I'm surprised that they don't have serving control already in the packaging because those things are like you said, one gummy bear. You're not supposed to eat a whole gummy bear, but to the average person, they think, oh, I can eat a gummy bear. No.
I would have done it.
I love gummy bears.
They read
Or 3 or 4.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, so that part that you were saying, you're not supposed to eat the ear off the gummy bear?
Yeah.
Because that
Really
was
want to
correct.
know?
Yeah.
I don't really. You'd have to look at the packaging, and I don't have any of that with me. But the suggested serving size for rookie, if you don't, is 5 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
So a gummy bear can be anywhere between, depending on the THC level that they put in there, because that should say that on the packet, is usually somewhere between 10 and 25. So yes, you can only eat the ear or the head off the bear, or a bite out of the brownie. You know, and that's only stuff that you're buying in your store, because if you got it in your hand,
There's only one way to find out.
Right. I know they started doing out. I've seen some literature and articles on outreach to seniors. That back in the day, like when my hair was down to here, they're reminding people that you know this is not what you think was Maui Wowie or Sensimilia, which was supposed to be up there. And people are going, well, it's legal now. You know, we do it when we go to the the Grateful Dead concert, and it's putting them in cardiac arrest.
well, yeah, I don't know if anybody really does.
But anyway, but there was they but and other things because of underlying conditions and whatnot. But it was like it overwhelmed people's systems. It wasn't what you were doing in 1974. Not even close. So education, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, they should use a measured shot glass when you're pouring out your tequila. It's people have to be educated.
So we'll work on the details later. I just wanted to see your reaction. It looks like you're willing to take maybe the next step and try to figure out what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you want me to work with?
Michael Francis.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Let's work with him on the next one, so we'll see how it looks. I work with Roberta, and I have been historically the past 2 years. She's been super helpful with me.
Mm-hmm.
She has a great history in public relations and marketing, so she knows stuff like this. I'm not bound to having to work with her. We can work with other people too, if you want to do that. I don't even know if I'll contract with her next year, depending on what we're moving forward with. It's a little expensive, but then again, if it depends on how it looks, we can talk about
I think you can discuss it, but I think the bottom line is we're looking at that you're a professional in the field of health. The agency is, made up of professionals in the field of health, and you're doing excellent groundwork here. and you had the expertise that we would need to rely on to replicate a program. And as Commissioner Johnson said, there probably is no reason to, reinvent the wheel here. And we can, move forward with you in your mission for the sake of, good health within the community. Okay. Anything else, commissioners? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Franzik.
Yep. So we have some more to discuss as well regarding the marijuana program.
Now you're getting done.
Wanted to give an update on the social equity grants that we have for people with low-level marijuana offenses. We have given away 2 so far. One to Corey Roberts for architect's fees at his location. We're on the north side of town there. And Ollie Crawford has received one for waiver of his application fees for his location on Apple Avenue. So he's just submitted his application, and we waived the $5,000 application fee for that.
Okay.
I also have a handout here with a couple of proposed changes to the application. And I gave the description of the grants that are available, and in red I highlighted the suggested amendments. One would be for the business startup grant. We have it listed as you can have that go towards your soft costs, such as developing a business plan or architecture fees, engineered drawings, and things like that. But we also think it would be appropriate for hard costs as well, whether that's equipment that you need to purchase or things for your businesses, or even rental assistance programs. I think that would be a good way to help people get their business started. We already had one applicant who we would have had to reject anyways because they were outside of the city, but they did want to start a transportation business, which was not related to marijuana, but they did want to offer a shuttle service. Wanted to purchase a van, but that would not have fallen under any of these categories, and we did think it was an eye-opener for future business requests to be able to finance some of those things as well. And on the back, I just made a couple of notes that we should have a disclaimer that applications must be approved before expenses are incurred. We did have someone who tried to get expenses for something they had several months in the past. We would like to make sure that those business expenses are the grant applications approved before the business expenses are incurred. And we did want to kind of get some clarity on what the threshold should be in terms of convictions. We do say that it has to be a low-level marijuana conviction, and sometimes they'll have a charge that's a low-level marijuana conviction, but they may also have a serious offense, like armed robbery or some other type of felony that's non-marijuana related within the past 5 years, and we want to know if we should entertain those applicants or not.
How does that line up with what the state does in their determination for any of their programs?
I'm not sure what they do. I do know that you do have to have a low-level marijuana conviction and be in a distressed area in 19 counties, but I'm not sure what they do in terms of felonies.
These all seem reasonable.
I have actually a question. I should have asked you earlier. I'm sorry. Applicants must be a resident. Is there like a timeline there? Like a resident for the last 6 months or 2 weeks or 1 year or anything for somebody to just roll up and get an apartment, the day before they apply or something, you know what I mean? Versus being a true, versus being a actual resident versus somebody that just moved here to get access to the program.
There is not. Most of the 5 grants, you do have to be a resident. One, you do not even have to be a resident. You just have to open your business within the city.
Mm-hmm.
But on the ones that you need to be a resident, there's no threshold
Yeah.
for how long you have to have been there.
So they could rent this month and leave the next.
Essentially.
And maybe I'm overcomplicating it. I've just seen things like that where, like, I think to be the state one, like to be a social active candidate, it wasn't like you had to be in that area. You had to have lived there X number of years out of the last X or something like that. It was a certain amount of the years, and maybe there's something similar to that we can have here, like lived in the city limits for 12 of the last 18 months or something like that. For somebody who maybe recently moved away, that wants to now be able to come back. But
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, I would
I
agree.
think it would, so that we're capturing actual committed residents.
Yeah. Maybe one option would be 12 months in the last 48 months or something like that, because there could be somebody again who moved away 2 years ago or whatever because they went away to college or they were, you name the reason, but they've lived here for 25 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But there could be just a number.
Yeah, I'd propose adding must have been a resident within 12 of the last 48 months to all the ones that have the residency stipulation.
That'd be reasonable.
And that way we can cover people, like you said, that just moved out.
Yeah.
But they're really Muskegon residents.
Yep.
Any other observations for Mike on these criteria?
Oh, good job, Mike.
Also working with Nancy Waters at the county on holding an expungement clinic. We had some pretty big ambitions to have something at the Van Dyke Mortgage Center, but those plans fell through, unfortunately. She's also working with the prosecutors to come up with a plan where we can participate. They actually you can actually go there now and get your records expunged. You need to go there and get all the paperwork, and then you need to take it home, fill it out. You need to go and get your fingerprints, and then you need to send this off into the appropriate places. Now, a lot of people that are coming in are not very familiar with all this paperwork and don't have those skills, so some of that stuff's getting lost in the process. So we're still working with them on maybe holding an expungement day, but other ideas that we've kicked around with is maybe using some of this funding to hire an attorney to be over there, maybe one day a week or Friday afternoons, to where people can go and they get all that paperwork, and then we actually have an attorney sitting there in the building to help do what they need to do. We've also talked about this last Monday, we talked about the biometric fingerprint devices. That's another thing that people are not being able to do, so we've actually priced some of those out. I'm working with the police department on buying some of those. With that funding, then we can use it for this, and then the police department can use it for whatever they need it for when that's all done. So just want to give an update that we are getting close on either an expungement clinic or having somebody over there in the offices at the prosecutor's office very soon. So something we're still working on. It's taking a little bit longer than we expected, but should have everything all figured out in the next month or so.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
The expungement clinics are for any offenses, not just marijuana offenses.
Well, that's something we haven't totally discussed yet. I think it was kind of implied that we'd be hiring someone for a clinic just related to marijuana. But if that's not the case, we can broaden it.
It seems like if we got the system in place, I mean, anything that we could help with would probably be good. I know the programming is focused on marijuana, but there's a lot of folks that have that marijuana thing that, remember Jeff said that included something else at the time, of resisting arrest and possession or something like that. It'd be nice to, some kind of violation related to it. It'd be nice to
traffic and license issues.
So would have to be a correlated or buy-in with the marijuana.
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think if we set up the program to help folks, I'll let Mike look into that. But if we set up the program to help folks
We should just be
and they're eligible for
yeah.
expungement, we should help them while we're there. If we got the resources there and they're a resident and we can be helpful, we should do that. One thing that John Schreier pointed out when we went through this process was I think it was an easy yes to talk about doing those fingerprint scanners, because one of the problems I think was people would come in and they couldn't get, it wasn't like a one-stop shop. They'd have to come in and take paperwork home and go get fingerprinted and do some things. And there was like a lot of people, they fell off at that point. They never came back. And so the thought is, what can we do so that when they come in, they do not have to come back? You know what I mean? They come the one time and we take care of everything.
Yeah.
Paperwork wise and fingerprinting, and including potentially the fee. I think we talked about, right? And the fee I think might have been mostly related to the fingerprinting, but help make it so that it doesn't cost a lot of money when they do it.
Right.
But John said we have to be careful about hiring an attorney to come in and help them through the process, because some of the things that they're getting expunged, we might also stand on the other side of with our actual attorney or our actual parliamentary law. So he just said we probably want to think that one through, how we would do that without creating a conflict of us essentially paying somebody to go, to advocate on both, essentially on both sides of the issue. Is that a fair assessment of what John said, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll continue on the investigation and our collaboration with the clerk's office.
Yes.
At the county.
Yep.
Okay.
Also wanted to talk about what's going to Planning Commission this week.
Before-
I had one more question here.
Yeah, and expungement. Thank you for your work and conferring with our county clerk on moving forward with expungement. And I do like that. It's an innovative idea of could we potentially have an attorney there helping those people, because it can be confusing for a lot of folks. And I would agree that we want to help people beyond just marijuana convictions with that. What's the fingerprints reader? What benefit would that be, or how? Because I understand Nancy Waters, her office, the county clerk's office, provides free fingerprinting after you've lined everything up and got your court date. Then she will provide that complimentary. Would that help expedite that process for on her end or our end, or would we be able to provide cheaper or free fingerprinting if we have that device ourselves, or
from what I'm hearing is they're just not getting them done. So
there's only so many places they can go. So they have to leave there and go to the county sheriff, for example, and get fingerprinted. And what we'd like to be able to do is say, just go to the next table and get fingerprinted. And the electronic ones are better, but they're more expensive too. And so if we buy the electronic one, we can help people quite a bit faster. The turnaround.
How quickly could you buy it?
How quickly could I buy it?
Yeah.
I'm still working with the police department. I haven't got a hold of anyone. I've done a little research on my own.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm looking at the good ones or not, but they're as low as $300 up to a couple thousand, and I would assume a couple of weeks.
Coming back
The reason why I asked is because I'm actually working on an expungement clinic coming up at beginning of next month. In concert with the Black and Brown Cannabis Guild out of Grand Rapids, and they've lined up attorneys to the Cooley Law School, and so we're going to be doing an expungement clinic for about 4 hours open to everybody and all reasons, not just marijuana related. So that could be, if that device is available, it could come in handy at that clinic. So this was what I was wondering, but I will share with you more details as we're crystallizing.
I'd be excited to learn more about your expungement clinic, if there's any ways we could partner with that group as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, we can get the machine, but you need a certified operator.
Okay. Moving on to the next topic. We're going to Planning Commission this week. What we're asking for is we recently rezoned the Lakeside area to its own form-based code district a couple years ago. When we did that, most marijuana businesses were not allowed. Caregiving was in that area because it was mostly B2 and B4. Now, staff made a mistake and did not include caregiving because we didn't realize that we already had a caregiver in that area. So it was kind of an oversight. So we really zoned somebody out, a local person, a minority who's very well respected in this industry and is doing caregiving, and they also want to get into state licensing and do one of the Class B growers. Now, about a year ago, this commission asked us to come up with a way to help local people get more involved with the business because they were getting priced out of the marijuana zone. So what we decided to do was we decided to allow wherever caregiving is allowed, which is B2, B4, medical care in the industrial districts, to be able to do the non-intrusive types of licenses, which would be your micro businesses, which is limited to 150 plants, and then your Class A and Class B grows, which is up to 500 plants, and marijuana events. We figure that those are types of uses that basically are going on in the neighborhoods now with some of the stacking of the caregivers. We're seeing a lot of buildings with 300, 400, 500 plants, and they're not really bothering anybody. So what we're simply asking to do is to amend the Lakeside Form-Based Code to allow those same small uses, as you saw in your B2, B4, and industrial districts, back into the Form-Based Code, because that's what this area was initially zoned for. Now, the Lakeside Form-Based Code has 4 different context areas. We're only suggesting that 2 of these context areas would be allowed to do this. That's your Lakeside Heavy Commercial and your Lakeside Commercial. And there are 37 parcels in that district that are zoned for that. But really, for this type of use, you're going to need upwards of 5,000 square foot to operate a grow for at least 100 plants and have space to dry it, and even more space if you want to have a retail space out of your micro grow. But really, there's only a handful of parcels that this really could affect in the district. So we went about this how we handle any other case. It's an ordinance amendment. We put a notice in the paper. We did not directly mail anybody. We don't do that with ordinance amendments, but we did notify the Lakeside Neighborhood Association through the NAM organization, and we're just here tonight to make sure that's all right with everybody, and plan on moving forward with this on Thursday.
Well, it'll be an interesting discussion. Commissioner Emery.
Yeah, this does. I mean, I kind of understand it. It doesn't give carte blanche for anybody to like. Okay, I'm going to start. They still have to go before us, you, and rezone. Let's say complete auto building
Now,
to do pot.
so the complete auto building, which is zoned in the Lakeside Heavy Commercial,
Yeah.
which would be a context area, it's allowed. If this is approved by the commission, then what they would need to do moving forward is get a special use permit from the planning commission.
Okay.
So it's
So
not
they
carte blanche
can't
for any
just
license.
buy the building, open it up, and say, "Okay, I'm going to do pot." They have to go
Exactly.
apply for a special use.
Yes.
Okay.
Continued multi-levels of approvals need to be.
Because this basically is to help the one that is already there.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And this is going to be like how we did the last time when we helped out the local people. It's not going to create a frenzy for these properties where everything's
Right.
going to go out of control price-wise.
Right. So, and even if he wants to go farther than what he is, he's medical marijuana caregiver right now. He would still have to get approval to go micro business or.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Any other questions on Mike? We'll see how discussions go this Thursday, or it comes back, to us. But those were great observation question there to qualify all that. There's multiple layers that remain.
Oh yeah, the original caused a huge uproar in Lakeside. So I just want to make sure that.
The original request for Lakeside was for retail and provisioning, and
Yeah.
that's not even going to be allowed.
Okay. That's mostly what I wanted answered, just to make sure.
Commissioner?
I'd just like to say thanks for the heads up, because it's always good to know. And sometimes we, I think it's good to follow the process. And now we understand it's going to planning. We can digest what's said there, and we can consider
Yeah.
it
Yes.
when it comes back to us, knowing that that's the process.
Anything else for Mr. Franzik?
I have one more quick thing.
Yeah, did you have a question? Or
No, I was just gonna observe that our zoning administrator is pretty versatile these days. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Commissioner asked for a listing of the open marijuana shops and what they have donated so far. So I have a listing of the 6 top companies are open retail stores, and the bottom 2 are 2 grows that have been open for at least 6 months. And I have it broken down into what they've donated to the city so far. If you'll remember from our zoning ordinance, there's some pretty stringent landscaping requirements and decorative light post requirements. Now what we've seen is a lot of them have really decked out their areas and landscaping, but anything they couldn't fit on site, they've donated that cost to the city, and we'll be planting plants around the marijuana district with that extra money. And the light posts, I believe it's coming tomorrow for the decorative street lamps that will be going down the bike path on Laketon near the marijuana district. Those will all be funded by these donations. And there was a charitable cause section. I left that out because everyone's said they're going to donate to local charities or events. They didn't really put an exact figure of what they were going to do. But as far as the MSEP, Park Place Provisionary is the only one that's paid so far. They paid $1,250, which was lower than what they pledged. Rare, Red Butts, Timber, and Bella Soul. Sorry, not Bella Soul. Sozo have pledged profits, but did not donate after their first year. We did have phone discussions. They said that they were not going to be donating at this time. But it is revenue, if it increases, that they plan on doing that. Bella Soul has leased out to an LLC called Cloud Thoughts and are charging low rent. That was also one of the options through the MSEP. And ProCana, which opened about 6 months ago, they really restored their building nicely on Sanford Street. And they just sent in their landscaping and light posts, and they're planning on sending in a $5,000 check for the MSEP once they have their first harvest, which will be this fall.
Very nice.
So not everybody has fulfilled their pledges, but we do make an effort when we send in their yearly permit notices that we remind them that what their pledge was from the last year.
Questions or observations for Mike on that issue? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Franzik.
All right, thank
Actually,
you.
one question.
Okay.
How many total operators do we have in the city?
These are the ones that are open.
So these are all the ones that have permits and are operating right now.
Yes, they have been open for some time. There may be some that have only been open for a month or opening. We don't really ask them to, send in their donations until they've been open for a year.
Yeah, you check in at the anniversary or when they apply for the renewal. So all but one has committed to our MSCP then. Although not all of them have followed through, but all but one have committed to our MSCP.
Yeah, okay. I've heard of one that's struggling. I don't want to name them, but I wouldn't expect them to send anything in.
Yeah.
And I think as we see which ones are going to be staying around a long time, I think they'll have a better sense of giving back to the community and being able to do that. Because right now, I think everyone just playing the waiting game to see how many more of these industries are going to open here.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, we're open for public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the commission at this time? If not, then Mayor, want to take us home to dinner so that we can reconvene tomorrow?
We have the CRC meeting.
Oh, we have a CRC meeting.
It's really quick.
Would you like to adjourn us so we can go to Commissioner Renzima's meeting?
I move to adjourn.
Support.
Been moved by the Vice Mayor, supported by Commissioner Emmerich to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
In opposition? Okay.
The packet